Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the regular meeting of February 19th. I'd like to ask those in the audience that can stand to do so. We start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, any additions, deletions, or amendments? It's my understanding that proclamations C and D have been moved to another night.
Which two again? C.
That would be Mr. Johnson and Cupcakery.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if you can scratch C and D from your agenda for tonight. Okay. Is there any other agenda additions or deletions? If not, can we have citizen participation? As we call your name, if you come to the podium and kind of talk into the microphone so the people at home can hear you, if you could keep your comments for 2 or 3 minutes. We have a bunch of people who want to speak, and we've got a busy calendar after that. Okay, thank you. All right, our first speaker is John Taylor Sims, and she'll be followed by Carrie Bridges. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Good evening, City Council members. My name is Natal Sims, and my husband, Lorenzo, and I are residents of Woodmore Estates. I will present 2 requests to the Council for consideration with respect to the Council's response to the Prince George's County's government concerning the Redeemed Christian Church of God Victory Temple's application for a water and sewer plan amendment change to the current category of the property at issue from W5 S5 to W4 S4. First, I request that the Council's comments to the Prince George's County's government include a statement of opposition to the proposed development and not include a recommendation for approval of the category change. The City Council has been considering whether to recommend a category change from W5 S5 to W4 S4 for the property at issue. After reviewing the Prince George's County adopted 2008 water and sewer plan, it's my understanding that the Bowie City Council is not precluded from including in comments back to the Prince George's County's Department of Environmental Resources the Council's reservations, objections, and/or opposition to the proposed development, even if technical requirements for the water sewer category change are met. The Prince George's County's adopted 2008 water and sewer plan opens with the following statement. Water and sewer planning is critical to the staging and promotion of orderly growth of communities and the prevention of urban sprawl. As part of the referral and review component of the legislative amendment process used in the county to advance properties from Category 5 to Category 4, the Prince George's County Department of Environmental Resources refers applications for water and sewer plan amendments for review to various planning and public works.
I have to ask you to wrap up quickly.
Yes, thank you. I'll certainly continue, Your Honor. It appears that DER requested comments from the City of Bowie. Comments from the Bowie Council and others reviewing the application for the water sewer change will be considered by DER as it prepares a report evaluating the merits of a category change, and DER will then submit that report to the Prince George's County Council. Pursuant to Section 2.1.4 of the county's adopted 2008 water and sewer plan, which describes the category change policies and criteria used by the county, an application may be rejected if policies and criteria governing changes to a designated category are not met. These criteria include, but are not limited to, environmental factors and economic concerns. Regarding environmental factors, the proposal must, among other things, protect and effectively utilize natural resources and preserve, protect, and enhance environmental quality. Regarding economic and general fiscal concerns, the new development will be analyzed for its fiscal related to location, community needs, service, and infrastructure. Importantly, the new development shall not unduly burden the existing taxpayers or the WSSC ratepayers. DER and the Prince George's County Council will take these criteria. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. I thought I had 5 minutes based on the rules.
Yeah, well, please wrap up.
I certainly will. My husband and I, Lorenzo Sims and I, urge the City Council to consider the same criteria at this juncture that DER and the County Council will consider, especially since Bowie residents of Woodmore Estates will be greatly impacted by the proposed development. To that end, I ask that the City Council provide a statement to DER that it is opposed to the proposed development at this juncture based on constituents' concerns that the development will not protect natural resources, it will not preserve, protect, or enhance environmental quality, that the council is opposed based on residents' economic concerns about property devaluation, and the undue burden that the development will place on existing taxpayers and WSSC ratepayers. And finally, the second issue that I present for the council's consideration is that the notice of public hearing for the February 4th, 2019 public hearing was deficient and thereby warrants issuance of a corrected notice in another public hearing. The notice of public hearing that was dated January 18th, 2019, mailed to Bowie residents by the city, reflects a proposed development of a 25,000 square foot building. The proposed development, however, is for a 60,000 square foot building, not for a 25,000 square foot building as reflected on the public hearing notice. I respectfully submit that the reference in the public hearing notice to a proposed 25,000 square foot building is a material error that renders the January 18th, 2019 notice insufficient for purposes of providing notice to the constituents about the proposed 60,000 square foot building. And for this reason, I request that the council delay further action until a corrected notice has been mailed to interested property owners, residents, and stakeholders regarding the proposed development of a 60,000 square foot building, and that a public hearing is held pursuant to that corrected notice.
Thank you, ma'am. Before we get to you, Carrie, I try to do this when we have long-standing elected friends here. We have former Mayor Gary Allen with us tonight, and thank you, sir, for coming. And I understand we have our former delegate, Jerron Levi. Where are you, Jerron? Good to see you, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Ms. Bridges. Oh, I'm sorry, and our current 23B, my favorite delegate in 23B. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Ma'am, good to see you.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, City Council members, city staff, and the citizens of Bowie. My name is Carrie Bridges, and I am here on behalf of South Bowie Boys and Girls Club and as a resident of District 3 to voice my concerns about the 60,000 square foot church that is requesting to have its classification change from water and sewage category 5 to water and sewage category 4. It is my understanding that an application has been filed at the county from the church asking permission to be included in the 10-year water and sewer plan for Prince George's County. It is in the church's best interest to have the city of Bowie agree to this change. I am fully aware that the city has a copy of the application filed to the county by the church. My concern with the city not demonstrating opposition to this category change is how the applicant responded to a very pertinent question on the application. One of the questions on the application under Section 4, entitled Proposed Development, asks, describe how the proposal will enhance the surrounding community, including the initiatives are offered to improve roads, public facilities, community services, and efficiently use environmental resources. I am aware that for this section, the applicant simply described the building and the parking lot, noting it was a 60,000 square foot two-story building with 750 parking spaces. District 3 will feel the most impact of this new 60,000 square foot two-story facility. If they cannot tell us, meaning the city, and more importantly, the residents of Woodmore Estates, Woodmore Highlands, and South Bowie Boys and Girls Club, whose football park is a stone thrown away from the 60,000 square foot building, how it will enhance the already gorgeous community, I would strongly suggest that the city not support the reclassification of this property.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate you coming. David Perry, will be followed by Tawo Dumoulin. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I'll try to be brief. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Bowie City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Tonight I wish to reference Proposal 18W07, which you will be voting on tonight. At the public hearing on February 4, it was recommended that the Redeemed Christian Church of God reach out to members of the community to discuss plans for a 60,000 square foot church located on the recently purchased 28-acre Zelko farm at 14403 Mount Oak Road. As a contingency to tonight's deciding vote by the City of Bowie Council to approve or disapprove this plan, I wish to go on record to say that this property, that as the property owner of 14401 Mount Oak Road, located on the same property that is in question, I have yet to have been notified of any proposed disruption, inconvenience, or degradation of the property and environment this mass demolition will have on my property and the surrounding infrastructure and quality of life, as you've heard others mention. As a taxpayer, landowner, and active voter in the Prince George's County, I reject this proposal and the ancillary plans which will likely ensue, to include the potential annexation by the City of Bowie of the proposed development site, the proposed amendment to the water sewer plan, and the unnecessary added congestion and disruption to the aesthetics of this once peaceful residential area.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comment. Tawo Damiran, and he'll be followed by Femi, and you'll have to help me on your last name. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, residents of Bowie. My name is Tawo Damiran. I live in Woodmore. I've been a resident since the year 2000, and I'm here to speak in reference to number 18W-07 for the Redeemed Christian Church of God Victory Temple for the reclassification of the property from W-5/S5 to W-4/S4. I've been a resident here, and I know I've been active in the neighborhood when the streets were all improved, and I will encourage the City of Bowie to support this application.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Femi Oshbrugula. His first name is Femi Oshobukra. Oh, there you go. I'm sorry. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the Council Chairman. And thank you for the opportunity to speak on this issue relating to Redeemed Christian Church of God Church relocation to Mount Oak Road. I'm a resident of Woodmore Estate, and I've been living in the area for close to 5 years now. I recently bought my house about 5 years ago. And I'm positively supporting the proposal. Reason for that is I believe it's going to add value to the area. That's my belief. I really don't see anything against what they're trying to do, because the area actually need some sort of support relating to the community in terms of what they can enhance the people in the area. So I believe if we have a church of that size, we help to add more value to the area. That's my belief. And I'm positively in support of the approval.
Thank you, sir. Is it Gary Johnson? And he'll be followed by Pastor Alamojo. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Glory Johnson. I'm a resident and I own property and have been here in Bowie for the last 6 years. I'm in support of the Redeemed Christian Church to build the church at the site. Reason being, as a registered nurse and a care coordinator, all I do on a daily basis is to coordinate care. And as we know, the median age group of the Bowie residents is growing. And right now, especially when coordinating care, we look for resources within the community. And I see that within the Bowie the city of Bowie, there's only one church that I had seen when I was perusing through the site, and when I do help other, people coming out of the hospitals to find resources within the community. This church actually has the resources needed, not only for the old, but it has it for single mothers, widows, and everyone else. I do understand there are some concerns regarding other issues, but I think that we, as the city, can work on each of those and help with adding these resources for our community, because as we know, as we continue to get older in the community, that we know that these resources are going to be needed for the residents of Bowie, and we can't rely only on the government in the state. We have churches like Redeemed Christian Church that will be able to provide and help relief to the residents here, especially when they're coming out of the hospital. We have a medical ministry over there that provides free health care. We also have several different things for people who don't have even places to stay, where we help out there. So, it would be in the best interest for this, for the city of Bowie to grant approval for this church. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Pastor? Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and the council members and the citizen. My name is Isaac, Pastor Isaac Adeyemo. I've been in the community since 2005, and I'm also a member of the Redeemed Christian Church of God. We're presently located at 13701 Old Annapolis Road, and we've been there since 2001. I'm also a resident of Woodmore Estate. Also being a member of the church, I want us to consider one thing tonight. Church is a place of worship, and it's not a clubhouse. It's not a place where we bring people that would destroy things or that would destroy the natural resources that we have. We're bringing a community church that will be able to help the community, that will be able to help children to grow in the way of the Lord. Adults will be canceled. Right now we go all the way to DC to go and feed people that are homeless. We bring them to church. We have it like that young lady just said. We have a medical ministry that that do help those who don't have medical card or insurance. Now, being a member of the community too, I love my community. It's not that I don't like I don't love my community. It's a community that I've lived for several years. But at the same time, I want us to consider that I do know that we have a problem with we have problems with water and sewage in the community, and other problems that are there. There will always be a problem, and we should look for ways to resolve those problems, but not to stop a development that will benefit the community, not to stop a community church that can be of help to both the community and the surrounding county. That is my own view. And also, lastly, this is a church. This is a place of worship. I don't think we should oppose bringing a church to Bowie. If you look at First Baptist of Glenarden, they have a very mighty church there, and there are communities, buildings, and residential homes that are all around that place, and they're still building. And also in Lanham, a mosque was built there. One gigantic mosque was built there. There's no reason to stop us. We want to work with the community, and I believe that I love my community, and I also love my church, and there's no reason why we should stop the church to bring a new development and to beautify Bowie City.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. James Collette, and he'll be followed by Derek Plummer. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is James Collette. I'm an original homeowner in Woodmore Estates. I was not aware of the February 4th meeting. I received this in the mail February the 14th. I received the email yesterday at 4 p.m. about this meeting. So already I'm not too happy about the situation. Now, in terms of a resident, I've been in DC all my life. I moved to Maryland. I moved in Bowie area because of the tree preservation and the niceness of Bowie. And so I'm an architect, so I understand what all of this means. And one of the reasons I purchased my house where I did is because I didn't want to deal with overdevelopment. So there are already 3 churches across the street within walking distance of each other. The building that we're in right now is approximately 79,000 square feet. So you want to build a church, 60,000 square feet, that's a little smaller, just a tad smaller than this building that we're in right now. Outside, I counted about 180 to 200 public parking spaces. 750 parking spaces is 4 times that amount. So you want to build a church this size with all of the parking on that corner on the 2-lane Church Road area. That's not, okay. That's just not good planning based on what I've read in Bowie and taking in consideration all of the aspects of quality of life. I moved from DC when they built that convention center because it affected my quality of life. So again, I understand what this means. I know what 60,000 square feet looks like. I know what 750 parking spaces look like. And I know what a traffic nightmare also will look like. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Derek Plummer. And he'll be followed by Anita, who has the same last name by coincidence. Derek Plummer and then Anita Plummer. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members. I stand here in opposition to this particular project for a number of reasons. As you've heard from some of my neighbors, we moved into this community for certain reasons. We love the area, we love the environment, we love the economic impact that we were able to bring as taxpayers, as voters. And what this project is fundamentally against all the things that we as parents, as husbands, as wives, have decided to invest in Bowie. I grew up in Bowie. I went to school in Bowie. I played on the soccer fields that I now, as a taxpayer, proudly support. And yet, this project is coming to us at the last minute when we have to take into consideration whether or not to move forward. There are economic factors, there are environmental factors, and when the church threw together a meeting within the last week, and that was poorly notified in terms of residents, only a handful of residents can come. None of our elected officials were there to hear from us directly in terms of why we do not want to see this in our community. The church said that they were checking off a box. I'm not a box. My child is not a box. The money that we invested in this home is not a box. This is where we live. This is where I want my children to grow up. And when they talked about this church, they talked about it in terms of for their future generations. And they don't know what their future generation is going to do to that property. Well, I know what it's going to do to my property. When I asked about the economic factors, what is it going to do to my property value? I pay a lot of money for my house. I pay a lot of money in taxes. Oh, we'll get to that. If you want that, maybe we can do that later. What about the environmental factors? What is this going to do for light pollution? What is this going to do for traffic? Oh, we'll get down the road. It doesn't matter. This is just checking a box. When we asked them about transparency, how much have they spent on this? How much do they intend to spend on this? How do we know if they start building on this that they will continue with this project? Oh, they didn't want to share that information. They didn't want to even share publicly available information. So the question before this council is, what type of community do we want? What type of community are we here to build? Are we going to build a community in which we all have a voice, in which we are all able to say that we live in this community? You hear some of the, I'm happy that a lot of their members came out. I live adjacent to that property. This will impact us. This will impact us when we go to our own church. And oh, by the way, 60,000 square feet. Evangel Temple is 55,000 square feet. So what does that mean for the home values adjacent to this property? What does that mean for the traffic? These are things that have to be taken into consideration. You've heard some residents already talk about water and sewer issues, and this is just the beginning. So I'm here to say, please do not move forward. If you do move forward, please give residents the opportunity to actually address their concerns in a meaningful and substantive way, not in some one-off meeting and checking a box. Yeah. There is no need to rush. There's really no need to approve, but there's definitely no need to rush. We have a voice, we have concerns. This is, for many of us, the biggest investment we will ever make in our lives. And we cannot take this lightly, and we will not take this lightly. And I ask that you do not either.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anita Plummer. Welcome, ma'am.
Greetings, honorable council members and mayor. My name is Dr. Anita Plummer, and ironically, I teach issues related to how climate change impacts the developing world at Howard University. So I'm here to talk about the climate impacts of this development in our community. One of the things that attracted me and my husband to Bowie was the Green Bowie Initiative. This idea that as members of the city, we have to think about our carbon footprint. And I know that's the logic or rationale that went into the building that we're sitting in now. So with the negative consequences of urban sprawl, we have to think about water pollution. We have to think about air pollution. And a 750 space parking lot increases each individual member of Bowie's carbon footprint, which has not only local consequences, but global consequences. It increases our pollution. It eliminates important green space and agricultural space that's currently present on the property. So I asked the honorable council members and mayor to not approve or not recommend this development. If you're not able to take that position now, that we delay and allow the community to provide their input on this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your comment. The next speaker is Oliankin. I can't read, your writing is as bad as mine. Inabe. That looks like I-N-H-O-P-A. Is that close? No. Oh, well, I apologize. I apologize. Welcome anyway.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olayinka Ibitoye, and I've been a resident of Bowie for the past 20, going on 21 years. We are here to support the proposal to bring Redeemed Christian Church of God to Bowie. To the community where we're talking about. One of the speakers said something about this area is peaceful, and someone said something about the beauty of the area and quality of life. Bringing Redeemed Christian Church of God, the Victory Temple, to that area is not going to bring down the quality of life of the people. It's not going to bring chaos to the community. Like one of the speakers said earlier too, that we've been at 13701 since 2001, and there has not been any problem or anything to say we've been disruptive or something. So we're going to bring, we're not going to bring any chaos to the community. We're just going to bring peace to the community. We're going to bring love to the community. And we're going to bring love to the children and even adults of the community. So I'm here to strongly, I don't know if I can use the word plead, but to please that we should just support us in building this edifice for our God in Bowie. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Billy Hall.
Hey, Millie.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council.
Good evening, Millie.
I'm here today, this evening, to discuss my concern with the 60-square-foot church that is asking to be included in the 10-year water and sewer plan for Prince George's County. The community has not received information concerning this project in a timely manner to hold discussion amongst us, each other. We did meet last Wednesday with the people that's invested in the interest in this project, and it was a meeting more to benefit them and not us. So I'm asking the city to please do not write a letter of recommendation approving this request. I also want to make a comment. The gentleman afterwards spoke with us and said that he really wanted to work with the community. So I said, okay, if you want to work with the community, why don't you consider throwing us a tennis court in, since the surrounding communities don't have amenities? And he stated, okay. Since then, I've done some research, and I found out that they're actually going to take 10 acres and sell to the developers to build houses. So please reconsider and do not make this recommendation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Michael Brown?
Good evening, Mayor Robinson and the council members and citizens of Bowie. I built my house 20 years ago in Woodmore Islands, and the concern that I have with the church is the effects of traffic. And the reason I bring this up is that in development, we're going to have 2 ice skating rinks a little further down Church Road, which we know will have a fair amount of traffic for ice skating time, and all the kids will play in hockey that their parents will bring them to practice and games every hour. We have 3 new housing developments that have been approved that are under construction, 2 under construction, and 1 that's about to be under construction on Church Road. We have another housing development that's going to be built with signs up on Woodmore Road that's about 150 yards away from the corner and the intersection of Mount Oak, Church Road, and Woodmore Road. As it stands now, there are times in the day, depending on when it is, when you try to leave your development, that it may take a few minutes for you to get out because of the traffic flow. With all the traffic that's coming, we know it's going to be quite a bit more traffic. To add something this large with this kind of parking facility is going to be a major impact on Church Road and Woodmore Road and Mount Oak Road, which are 1 lane in each direction. And the way I see it, it doesn't seem to be any room to widen those roads. So I would hope that they would do some kind of a traffic study before this is approved.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments. Motopiola, are you ready? Is that close? Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and city members of Bowie. My name is Motopiola Aderiti, and I'm a registered pharmacist by profession. I live in Bowie, have lived in Bowie, and I own a resident in Bowie for about 10 years. And I'll just like to simply put, I've heard a lot of concerns being raised. I'll just like to appeal to the community members to work with the church to support the building of the church at the current proposed site. Where we're at right now, the church has not brought any problems to the county on traffic-wise. Rather, we've added services to our community. So in the light of this, I'd like to recommend approval of the project.
Okay, thank you. Owen. Eduhoma? Oh, welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members and residents of Bowie. My name is Lieutenant Owen Eduhoma. I'm here to speak on behalf of the proposed building of the church at Mount Oaks Road. I've been in the military about 13 years now, and and I serve my country with all pride. Put on this uniform every day, with the understanding that I have a support system. I've also been on 3 deployments, and I will tell you, for those who've been in the military here, or if you have any family members in the military, it's challenging, it's tough out there. But having a spiritual platform where I can draw strength from has kept me to wear this uniform every day of my life. And I'm willing to serve my country for the next 7 years before I retire. I remember, I live in Bowie. I've been here for a couple of years now. And when I was going to buy a house here, one of the reference points was a church. Because I do understand that the nature of my job requires me to be ready to go at any moment's notice. And I need to take care of myself. And the church has been very, very supportive of my military career. Not just me, I also have other service members there as well who have been, we've been able to come together as service members and also reach out to the church to support us, either when we're on deployment or our family members when we're out, of our homes. And the church has been very, very supportive in that regards. I understand that the community has challenges in terms of, value of property, economic concerns and things like that. I would suggest that let's find a common ground. Let's find a way to work with the church, because we do understand that we all need a source of strength, and the church has been there for me and my family. And with that being said, I will request that Your Honor to please consider the church request and go ahead and approve the reclassification. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Karen Williamson. Karen Williamson. And you have the distinct honor of being the last speaker. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
And to the council. I am also a resident who lives in Woodmore Highlands. I've been there for about 19 years. And with all the facts that you've heard, there are a few that I can pick on that you haven't heard. And these are, we've had development, we have the Caruso homes going in, and they have completely shook the bedrock in our neighborhood. They have caused tremendous damage that no one is accountable for. My windows are sagging and falling and things of that nature. As well, when the Bowie Town Center was built, our whole neighborhood in Woodmore Highlands became a picking ground to people to come in and rob us. And that's not why we moved here. So I know that a church is a beautiful thing, but our neighborhood just can't support that large of a structure. It also, in order to service that church and to service the ice rink, you're going to have to bring transit. We don't have transit currently running up and down Church Road, and that's not why we're here. So I understand the need for the church, but the location itself just doesn't have the infrastructure to support us. It takes me at 9 a.m. when I leave my home, 10 minutes some mornings to get out onto Church Road. 10 minutes. And this is just because there are no traffic lights. There were no reason to have those things. But these are problems we're having. And when developers are coming in right now, they're building the WSSC standards. They are shaking the bedrock. There's no accountability for it. Their bonds are gone, and you have no one to go back for recourse. This is a really big problem. And we like our homes. We want to stay there. We've been there 20 years. We want to be there longer, but this is going to bring a tremendous burden on us. So I would ask that you consider and reconsider not approving this. Oh. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate everybody's comments. All right, at some time later on, we will bring that up under old business. We've already had the public hearing on that, so there won't be any additional discussion on it when we get to that point. Okay, we've got a couple of things we have to do next, and one of them is something we are very proud to start on tonight. We have the occasion to expand the membership up here tonight. We are going to introduce a new member, so I would ask if Dr. Darian Senn-Carter could meet us at the front, and council, if you meet us down here. We're going to swear in our newest colleague. painless, almost. One thing I have noticed is with your appointment, we have doubled our number of doctors on the council. So we're going doctor. Appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, what I want to introduce to you is our newest member, Dr. Senn-Carter. He is a graduate of the University of Maryland. Go Terps. Go Terps. Yeah.
Have the pin on today?
Huh? All right, we Terps have to stick together. But see, I predate him a little bit.
By a year?
5 years. We've already established the fact that he can't count. But we're very welcome. He's a graduate of the University of Maryland. He earned a master's degree at Towson University, and he received his doctorate of education from Edgewood College in Wisconsin. Darian resides in the Enfield Chase area. He is currently on the faculty at the Anne Arundel Community College, where he teaches Homeland Security and Criminal Justice. So it is our deep pleasure to welcome you. Let me tell you, he got here tonight. We had an opening that occurred in December when Councilwoman Glass resigned, and we had 27 applicants to interview for this position. And Dr. Senn-Carter ended up as the selection of choice. So he went through a pretty broad perspective. And I tell people that what that did for us is it reaffirmed the depth of talent that resides in this city. The quality of people that came forward to be considered for this was amazing. And as success had it, you succeeded, and you went through that process. And with that, I'm going to ask you if you would raise your right hand. And if anyone wants to take pictures, feel free. We don't interfere with parents or families. After I say aye, if you would follow with your name. I,
Darian Senn-Carter,
do swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And that I will be faithful.
And that I will be faithful.
And bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland.
And bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland.
And support the Constitution and laws thereof.
And support the constitutional laws thereof.
And that I will.
And that I will.
To the best of my skill and judgment.
To the best of my skill and judgment.
Execute the office of.
Execute the office of.
District 3 Councilmember.
District 3 Councilmember.
Of the City of Bowie, Maryland.
Of the City of Bowie, Maryland.
According to the constitutional laws of the state.
According to the constitutional laws of the state.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Robinson and City Council. The days, weeks, and months ahead are exciting, and I look forward to hearing the concerns of the residents and to represent the residents well. I also look forward to working with the many departments and committees in City Council, as well as my colleagues behind me. Today's a new beginning, a new chapter of opportunity and possibility. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I have to sit next to Mr. Martin. And I think we're going to probably end up back down there in a second. Oh, yeah. I forgot, we got two more proclamations to do. As a matter of fact, you got your proclamation, are your people here?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm sorry, let's go back down there. We have two proclamations that we're going to present tonight at the request of Council. Mayor Pro Tem Gordon.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. For those who do not know, I am Councilmember Gardner, Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Bowie. And again, Dr. Carter, welcome aboard. Thank you, thank you. Each one of us here have tonight in the audience, and many of us that are standing behind me, we all have a platform. And you can use that platform for whatever you choose to do with it. One of my goals is to be certain to educate as many people as possible, or to provide a resource to education. And one of my partners that has been able to assist many young people in the city of Bowie, as I walk around in the community and meet people at the breakfast counter at First Watch, walking through Walmart, talking to young people, I always ask them, what is your goal? What are your goals in life? And many of them tell me they want to go to school. They really want to be in classrooms and obtaining a degree, which is very important. Education is, by all means, the most important thing. I think our mayor, his slogan is education, 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 which is also echoed by my colleague, Dr. Ike Trout. And tonight I want to present a proclamation to someone that I consider a friend now, Dr. Artie Travis of Bowie State University. If you would please come forward, sir. This gentleman here, Dr. Travis, sat down with me on a number of evenings and was working with a number of young people to ensure that not only they were admitted into school, but also that they had the economic resources. And definitely this recent spring, when students are returning to school and being faced with the government shutdown, many families did not have the means of taking care of the responsibilities such as tuition when trying to meet mortgages and car notes and food, putting food on the table. So Dr. Travis worked with a number of young people that are Bowie residents. Doesn't matter that they're Bowie residents or not, because we want to see that all of them are educated, but Bowie residents, he sat and worked and got them into school and got their tuition taken care of. And I have a young lady tonight. I invited a number of young women to come forward and that were recipients of his support. And some of them wanted to come and thank you tonight in person, Dr. Travis. And I'm going to have her say a few words. If you would introduce yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Ayman Mambo. I'm actually a student at Bowie State right now. I am currently getting a degree in mathematics with a concentration in secondary education. I'm from the city of Chicago, and honestly, Dr. Travis doesn't know this, but he is the reason I'm still here in Maryland, because I didn't have the finances to stay here in Maryland to complete my education. And if you leave with one thing today, I just want you to know that Dr. Travis is a superhero with superpowers. He has compassion as well as passion, as well as patience. And he has very strong calves because he's always moving for us. He's always but Dr. Travis, I thank you because again, like I said, you don't know. You are one of the reasons that I'm still here, and I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate you allowing me to help other students get into education as well as math. And I thank you for that. I appreciate it.
So, Iman? Thank you. He definitely deserves that applause. So the City of Bowie, Maryland, a proclamation, be it hereby known to all that the Council of the City of Bowie, Maryland takes great pleasure in recognizing Dr. Artie L. Travis, Vice President, Student Affairs, Bowie State University. Your dedication to community education and student enrollment is greatly appreciated and recognized. We are so pleased to have you as a partner of ours at Bowie State University, presented this 19th day of February 2009, signed by our Mayor, G. Frederick Robertson, and the Council, and our Clerk, Wilder Hernandez. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I'm going to want you to say a few words. Okay. Come on around here if you like.
Well, Mayor Pro Tem Gardner, Dr. Trout, Mayor, and the Council, I was trying to figure out why Ms. Mumble was here. Ms. Mumble walked into my office a couple years ago and just said, I need some help. And we helped her, but I cannot be here accepting this without acknowledging Dr. Brian Clemens, who is our Vice President for Enrollment Management. Brian, could you? And then also Mr. Tony Salvia, who is our Vice President for Business and Finance. I used to not like our finance folks, but the three of us worked extremely hard to try to help and assist our students. And I want to say, Ms. Mumba, you just surprised me. Our president of our Graduate Student Association, Ms. Diamond Bracey, and two of my students back here who keep me going a lot, but also my Bowie sister, who is also Dr. Sherelle Briscoe. She's in the wrong sorority, but she's also. But also, I did want to say, because my time helping students, helping here, because I've lived here in Bowie. I just moved about 6 months ago. My wife passed back in April, and we moved. But my wife, my middle daughter, Amber, my youngest daughter, Maritza, and my grandchild, Winter Francine, back there have been also the key support for me giving back to our students at Bowie State University. And I heard Go Terps earlier, but I also heard Go Bulldogs. So it's a joy every day getting up. Every day at Bowie State University is a great day, even on a bad day, because we are here to try to assist, help our students grow. And that's what our president is doing at this point in time. That's what our colleagues, because when people ask me how many kids do I have, I've got 4. 3 of them are here right now. But I have 6,000 kids who I try to assist and help on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
For photos, if any family or friends or anyone want to come up and grab a group photo, that definitely, we are here. Come on, family, come on down. And Winter. David, Miss Mumbo, Winter.
Can we move the mic a little bit? Can I just push this down a little bit?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Travis. Thank you again. Thank you again. And thank your family for the support that they provide to you so that you're able to do such a fine job on behalf of the students of Bowie State University. Now, I want to present another proclamation this evening. And here in the audience, we have one of our homegrown Bowie, Prince George's residents, a friend to the council, a friend to the city of Bowie, someone that I like to consider a growing friendship. For those of you who do not know or are not familiar, but this is one of the most popular morning shows currently. I'd like to present this proclamation to our friend, Mr. Joe Clair of the Joe Clair Morning Show. Mr. Clair, if you will come forward, please. Everyone, oh, well, there you go. Everyone, take a look at this gentleman. We're recognizing him tonight for his 50th year, his 50th birthday. Okay. The city of Bowie, Maryland would like to present a proclamation. Be it hereby known to all that the council of the city of Bowie, Maryland takes great pleasure in honoring Mr. Joe Clair of the Joe Clair Morning Show on the occasion of his 50th birthday. Further, Mr. Joe Clair has had a positive attitude and joy for living, which has earned him the love and support of his family, friends, and community. Now, be it proclaimed that Mr. Joe Clair will celebrate his 50th birthday surrounded by many well-wishers. The council of the Bowie, city of Bowie, Maryland presents this proclamation to Mr. Joe Clair and wishes him a very happy 50th birthday, presented this 19th day of February 2019, signed by our Mayor G. Frederick Robertson and our City Clerk, Wilder Hernandez. I'm going to have Mr. Clair say a few words.
This is my first proclamation. I didn't know what the procedures were. And then you had me go after the doctor who's putting everybody through school, you know, who does something serious and real. And then after the people who were for and against the church, I don't know, you know. But what I would like to say is on this day, as I celebrate my 50th year, I am born and raised in Prince George's County. I am a product of Prince George's County Public Schools. Yes, woo-woo. I have lived all over this great country, including New York City, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, and I came back to the area to take the job at WPGC Radio, which I grew up on, and do that morning show. And if I may, I aspired to be what my predecessors were, Donnie Simpson, Russ Parr, and those who all moved to Bethesda and up there. Well, me and my wife, after looking at the area, we stayed in Bethesda for some time and decided that the place where we wanted to raise our children, the place where we wanted to start this chapter of our lives, the biggest chapter of our lives. You know, you raising kids and having jobs, that's a long time. Bowie spoke to us, it screamed to us. We moved here in December of 2017. We moved to the Fairview community. We bought a home that had been here for a good while. We did what a lot of people are doing. We reconditioned and renovated the home, got the home that we wanted, and then found that everything that we wanted in a community is here in Bowie. I have a lot of plans while I'm here, one of them being some business that I hope to do with you and this illustrious council. How y'all doing? And I just want to say that on this occasion, it's humbling. It's very humbling. It is very to sit here in front of Delegate Watson, who I have known for 30 years. We were classmates at Morgan State University, MSU, and he is my frat brother, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I plan on having a big impact and a lot of influence on this community. I've only been here a year and some change, but I think that these next 25, 30, 40 years, watch what your God does here in Bowie, Maryland. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Any family, supporters, photos, anything? Ron Watson.
I tried to get my wife to stay, but the kids said, "Nah, we out of here, Mom."
Dr. Watson, I know she didn't put a film in here. Thank you, guys. Okay. Are we finished now? Yes. All right, thank you. City Manager report.
Mr. Mayor, I'll pass on right now. I have a lot to say with the mid-year report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Council, we have a consent agenda items A through D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Gardner, seconded by Mr. Marcos. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Old business amendment to the Prince George's County waiver and sewer plan. We heard this session 2 weeks ago. We tabled it at the request of Mr. Garner to allow for some discussion. I'm going to ask staff if they have a quick summary of where we are on this and what the issue is, and then I'm going to ask for a motion so we can conclude this.
If you'd like, Mayor Frank Stevens from the city planning staff, I can quickly review the PowerPoint show that was displayed 2 weeks ago to refresh your memories of the property and the location. It's our understanding that representatives of the church, Mr. Paul Jackson, met with about a dozen or so residents last week to further discuss the project. The request is for a water sewer change from Category 5 to Category 4. The property is located in the southwestern quadrant of the intersection of Mount Oak Road and Church Road. It includes about 28 acres. It's zoned RE, residential estate, as are properties to the east. The Woodmore Estates property is also zoned RE, and across Mount Oak Road is RE zoning. This is an aerial view of the property. As I said, it contains 28 acres with frontage on both Mount Oak and Church Roads. This is the existing water sewer category slide. The light blue areas are in Category 3, which is what's required for development, and you can see the properties to the north of the subject property and to the southeast are all in the WS3 categories. This is an illustrative plan. Again, the intersection of Mount Oak and Church Roads, an illustrative site plan doesn't necessarily mean that the property would develop in this manner, but it's just an illustrative concept plan depicting a general location of the church and the parking field. As I mentioned, the request is to go from Category 5 to Category 4. The application does meet the criteria required to make that change from 5 to 4, and it's our recommendation that the council send a letter to the county council recommending that the property be advanced from 5 to 4. Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Sal?
Hey, thanks for presenting tonight. So real quick, this is currently zoned RE. So it is zoned for low residential development.
It's zoned RE. A church is permitted in the RE zone.
But it could also potentially be residential.
That's correct. Gotcha. On lots of at least 40,000 square feet.
Okay, cool. So if, for one reason or another, the church doesn't end up getting built there, it is conceivable down the road, given the demand for property along Church, that this could be a neighborhood one day, not unlike the ones that already exist in this area, right?
That's possible.
Okay, so just a friendly reminder to everyone here tonight, right? Right now it's a church. It could be a new neighborhood. So, pick your poison. I hear a lot of the objections, I understand, but, it could be something else. So just keep that in mind next time we're here in 5 years debating whether we want another neighborhood on Church. That's all I got.
Thank you. That's a good point. Any other questions of staff? Mr. Wolfen? That's a no? Oh.
Not so much not so much a question, just a general comment. And actually I do want to follow up on a question on the notification process that was followed for this. I'm a little concerned that we had some discrepancies between what people were aware of, or what they should have been aware of, the discrepancy between the size. I mean, a 25,000 versus 60,000. 60,000 is huge. I'm familiar with warehouses that come to mind. It's not a small effort. And I think that's a meaningful difference. Can staff help me out in terms of what process was followed and who did the notification, and if we're aware of any irregularities and if this discrepancy is actually material?
The notification was sent by the city. We were included the information we had available at the time that the notice was sent.
Okay. And when did we send it? Do we know?
I believe it was out the middle of January.
Okay.
The letter was dated January 18th.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have for you, recognizing the square footage that we've talked about here at 60,000, on this property, the alternative somewhere down the road could be houses, but it's estate residential. Presumably it would be water and sewer would not be there. They'd still have to apply for water and sewer, so it'd be well and septic. Is that correct under the current infrastructure permitted? Or do they have, if it was going to be estate residential, would they be entitled to water and sewer?
If it was, the zoning wouldn't be changing. It's the same zone as Woodmore Estates, which is RE. Okay. That property had to also go through the prescribed water and sewer category changes prior to that property being developed. So whatever permitted use would be on this property, whether it's a church or if we're talking residential, the development would go through the same category change from 5 to 4 to eventually to 3. And if, you're looking at, if it's about 28 acres, you're looking at probably, maybe 25 to 30 detached residential units on about 40,000 square feet.
Okay, so from a standpoint of what this could look like, we're looking at in one use case, we're looking at a 60,000 square foot church with the associated traffic and weekends and that sort of thing. And on the other, you're talking about, you said 25 to 30 houses?
That's just a guesstimate.
Spitball, that's fine.
Yeah, that's ballpark.
So rough order of magnitude, it's an additional 25 houses, which I think is a significantly lesser burden on the community than a sizable edifice that we're talking about here. I'm somewhat familiar with the current location of the church, and it's over on Old 450. It's not on a road that gets a lot of traffic because of its, the new 450 being parallel to it. So far I've not seen a burden on that, but I could certainly see how it would be a significant burden on a community. And certainly with the roads the way they are, I could see that being a significant burden for the community. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, we heard this. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Trell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So staff, a couple of things. One, you saying that the notice was sent out on January the 18th?
The letter was dated January 18th, so it probably went out that day. Yes.
Has any other notices gone out to the community since then?
Not by the city that I'm aware of.
At the last meeting, I specifically asked that request, that notices go out to the community, because at the last meeting that we had 2 weeks ago, the community was not notified. That's what they testified, that they were not notified. And I specifically asked that the community be notified, and I specifically asked the lawyer who was here for the applicant that take place. So you're telling me that that did not take place?
I believe the applicant's attorney may have sent out notices advising of a meeting to be held by them and the residents.
Well, let's get clarification, because you're saying no, now you're saying yes. I don't, what is?
Well, what he's saying is that what was sent out by the city, Dr. Trout, but this gentleman who is attorney for the development,
right.
You sent out a separate notice in accordance with what you were asked to do, and a meeting was held, correct? So let's chime in on that.
Correct, okay. Yes. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Paul Jackson from the law offices of Shipley and Horn, located in Largo, Maryland. At our last meeting, February 4th, it was asked that we send out a notice to 4 HOAs, and that notice was sent out, and a meeting was held.
Okay.
Particularly Ashley, it was a mail-in email was sent. We got a list from the city, and we sent the email and a letter to those 4 HOAs.
And how many people attended?
I have a list, approximately about 10 to 12.
That's a low turnout, because, I mean, there's about, if you take those 4 developments, that's at least 400 homes.
No, I agree. My concern at the February 4th hearing was the turnaround, getting the notices out and so forth, the week time frame. So relatively speaking to the list, yes.
Okay. Let me ask you this. There seems to be some additional information that was registered here tonight that, in addition to the church, and just to put things into perspective, you have the church at 60,000 square feet? That's a question. You have the church at being 60,000 square feet?
Yeah, that's the information that was provided to the county.
Okay.
That it would be 60,000 square feet. That square footage total is needed for the county because this water sewer application, the whole point is to determine whether or not there is adequate water and sewer pipelines for development. So we had to give them that 60,000 square foot to come up with the average roughly daily sewage use of 11,000 gallons per day. With that number, with that 12,000 number at that 60,000 square feet, the city of Bowie found that the pipes, the water and sewer adequately is sufficient for future development.
Okay, so you don't really need to have 60,000 square feet. You just did that as far as the numbers for the county? They asked us if we had any conceptual site plans early. So what do you need? Since you don't need the 60,000 square feet, what is it that you need?
Well, I'm not saying that we need it. That's been proposed right now as a 60,000 square feet church.
I heard the plan, but I thought I also heard that this plan was provided in order to give the county some basis as to what the county would need in the event that they wanted to know how much piping, availability in the water, the supply, et cetera, the density of the pipes. That's what I heard. So I'm asking, do you really need the 60,000 square feet, or are you just giving that from what I just heard, from what I just articulated?
In the preliminary planning, where the church is looking to develop a 60,000 square foot church, 2 floors, 2 stories, maximum height 35 feet, congregation 1,200 to 2,000 members. That number is significant because for churches, pursuant to the county zoning code, for every seat in the sanctuary, for every 4 seats in the sanctuary, 1 parking space is required.
Okay. Now, with regard to the church, 60,000 square feet, can you have this church there without going through WSSC water and have well water?
It's.
Let me give you an example. Okay, first of all, 60,000 square feet is 5,000 square feet less than the Safeway. So if I'm giving you the range of what they are, what you're talking about as far as the number of square footage, to give you people at home some comparison as to how large the unit would be. And the other thing is, just to give you some additional information, that there is a church that is on 301 that does not have WSSC water. It does use well water, and it's a relatively large-sized church. So I'm trying to ascertain, is it in fact, can you use well water? Because I'm also hearing that there may be some additional properties that you want to put on there as far as residential units, and if you don't have WSSC water, I know you can't put residential units there.
That's a question I cannot answer. I'm not an engineer. I know in brief discussions, we do have an engineer who is here from Capital Development Design, Mr. Jason Kim. I'm not sure if that's something that Mr.
It's my understanding that you cannot approve a development without having WSSC water, a development of that magnitude.
WSSC serves this area.
That's not my question.
Okay.
My question is, can you do it with well water? Because if you can do it with well water, then that means then there's a likelihood that you would not have to bring in those other 25 to 40 units because you wouldn't be eligible for it because you don't have WSSC water, you have well water. That's what I'm asking.
That would be in the step with the preliminary plan of subdivision. Primarily anything west of 301 is in the developing tier in this county. Anything to the west of Route 301 is on public water and sewer.
Okay, so as far as my question, you can't answer that question right now.
Well, I said we have an engineer here. I was going to turn to him to see if he could answer that question.
I don't want to get into the whole thing all over again. We don't want to debate the whole process.
Well, we don't have to debate the whole thing, but I just want to get some answers. So if I can't get the answers, right, you know where my vote's going.
All right, come on in. Come on.
Okay, what was the question again?
The question is, can you service that church with well water and not use WSSC water?
Currently, the county will not give a permit to develop the church with a well and septic in the size, considering the size and the number of congregations.
But now the size, is that including the other 25 to 40 units?
Even as of just the church alone, it exceeds the size, permittable size for the well and septic.
Which goes back to our other, to our initial question, maybe the church is oversized. I'm finished.
No, I think the church, the sizing of the church is within the
Thank you. Mr. Wolfley had a question.
Follow-up question, and I apologize, I didn't get this earlier. There was a mention made earlier about adding additional housing to this property after the church is built, that there are plans for that or some consideration. Can you speak to that?
Nothing set in stone. There has been consideration. The picture that's up, that's an illustrative site plan. It's, again, nothing set in stone because we haven't gone through the preliminary plan of subdivision. But the church and the park, and that's going to be 19 acres. So behind there, you have 10 acres. That's adjacent to District 3 and Woodmore Estates there. So with it being RE, there's a possibility of, if it's 10 acres, about 8 homes, given, with something zoned in RE, the minimum size of the lot has to be 40,000 square foot an acre for the most part.
So that's one option, is that it could be at the existing RE level. But I think, are there not exceptions for greater development on church property for apartments and the like?
That, I think Jason would know. With the development, we could only develop so much area. There has to be, 50% has to remain.
It's going to be a single family types of homes, not an apartment or anything like that nature.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One quick question.
Dr. Phil.
What is the park? What is the pavement? Is it pervious or what? Do you have any idea what type of parking you're doing on that?
We are not certain at this point because and again, it has to go through the preliminary plan review and all those conditions that will be set at that stage.
So you don't have any idea what you're looking at?
Right now, we can't determine because we have not gone that far.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Garner, you asked for the thing. You got a motion?
Yes, I do. I do have a motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I'd like to thank the members of the congregation for coming out and speaking on behalf of the church and in the church community. And I also like to thank those members of the Bowie community, Woodmore Estates, Highlands, Mount Oak Farms. Even though you're not in the incorporated city of Bowie, you are our neighbor, and we appreciate having you there. Due to a number of reasons, but the uncertainty of the size of this project and a number of factors here, I'm going to recommend that we do not move forward with this project. Even though the applicant does have the ability to go and circumvent and go directly to the county, I'm going to ask that each of the residents who've come out here tonight to stay involved, because you must, because if you're not, you may have that church as your neighbor. Now, I love churches. I love churches. I want it to be known that I am supportive of churches, but just not at this particular site. I am familiar very well with your neighborhood and your fence and the number of times it's been knocked down due to traffic. I'm aware also of Evangel Temple on Sundays trying to navigate Route 450 and having a church that size on Church Road with all the other developments such as Caruso Homes projects, and it's just be overwhelming. And again, and due to the uncertainty of the size of this project, I cannot support this project, and I'm asking that my colleagues form with me in denying your request.
Is there a second? Second. Second by
Mr. Mayor, I second that, and I also ask that each resident get involved and be a resident of record, because if you're not a resident of record, you will not be informed by the county planning board when these planning board hearings will take place. So you have to be a member, a citizen of record. That's very important.
Okay, all right, you have a motion recommending denial. Are there any questions on the motion? Dr. Senn-Carter, since you weren't involved in the process, if you want to abstain on that's a legitimate vote. All in favor of the motion?
Or you can select to be a part of it. Yes.
You can vote.
Okay.
Feel free to vote.
Feel free to vote.
You can do what you want.
That's why you're here.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay, unanimous.
Okay.
All right, good night, folks. Or, second.
No, hold on. We're not leaving. We have another agenda item.
All right, next item is update on environmental initiatives. Chair of the Environmental Committee will brief the council. Good night, folks.
Somebody wipe that. I am on that property. He never notified me.
Okay.
Never spoke to me.
Oh, I agree. You had a full house.
Folks, I appreciate if you live in that spot.
Don't take it personally, Gary.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations. Glad you're here. All right. Former mayor and our friend, Gary Allen. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My presentation is going to be a little anticlimactic after such a emotional hour and a half almost of these conversations.
You don't have to.
Before I begin, I want to say that I'm extremely pleased to have the opportunity to be one of the first presentations before our new council member here this evening, Councilmember Senn-Carter. Thank you very much and welcome aboard. It's been my pleasure to appear before this body and be a part of this body for over 40 years, so it's quite a change. I'm glad to actually see your membership, and based on your background and experience, I would expect big things. I want to take the further opportunity to recognize that several of my colleagues from the Green Team and the EAC are here, so let me ask them to stand because we've had the opportunity to discuss all the ideas that I'll be sharing with you over the next few minutes, and they contributed these ideas with the chairman of the Green Team, Vice Chairman of the EAC, several other members of the EAC, several of our new members. I'm very excited that they're here with us this evening. I'm going to try to move this along fairly quickly so that you have a chance to ask a few questions. Let me simply say that 3 years ago, you had a group of citizens who got together much like this group this evening. After it was actually at Ken Hill Center was even a larger group, and they listened to presentations that evening too, as a matter of fact. They contributed a lot of ideas, both young and old were present that evening, and that following fall, after that meeting that summer, we met here in this chamber and you adopted a strategy which is now called the Sustainability Plan for the city of Bowie. And now, on behalf of the Environmental Advisory Committee, I want to invite you to reflect on the next steps in well, actually making this city more sustainable that are consistent with that plan. And it's an opportunity for us to enhance and to build upon that plan. And I hope ultimately you'll see the opportunity that it represents to enhance the quality of life for this community, for our children and our grandchildren. But frankly, in that intervening period, that very brief period, just 3 years ago, +1, things have really been changing in our community, in our world, and our planet, because the earth is warming up, and the last 4 years have seen the warmest ever recorded in all of the time we've been collecting climate data in the United States of America. We can't ignore those kinds of conditions. No community, it seems to me, can fail to act. And now you have the opportunity, based upon the adoption of the plan you've done before, based upon the recognition you've achieved for previous actions in this environmental area, this community can become and remain a leader in addressing some of these things, because public concern, in our opinion, is beginning to grow. I participated, for example, in 6 hours of hearings before the Maryland General Assembly just today, and this topic was mentioned no less than 100 times in that hearing that I participated in by various individuals and organizations, because the concern exists for it at all levels, and mostly the decisions we make as individuals contribute to it, and as we come together as a community like this one, it's our opportunity to make a change. So the first and most important recommendation that the EAC is going to make tonight is that we want in the coming year the city to strengthen its commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Just 5 years ago, you adopted a greenhouse gas goal. We will approach you before the next fiscal year is over, asking you to enhance and strengthen that goal, because we believe conditions have changed. And because of those changing conditions, we can no longer simply look at goals that are 25 years, 50 years, or even 10 years down the road. We're going to begin to look more and more goals that are like 2025 and ask for some bold and challenging recommendations to do it. I was impressed, for example, by one of the people who testified about the last project when they raised a condition that we're concerned about, which is that the city use as a basis of approval for all future new development and redevelopment projects that new project conform to this more rigorous greenhouse goal, and that we begin to think not separately about what we ought to be doing about the environment and separately about economic development and local growth, but we begin to see how these things are closely integrated, because the quality of our life is determined by all, not just one or the other decisions, but how they actually come together on the ground and in the community. So by 2025, we would like to see this city entirely powered by renewable energies, and there are a variety of ways to do that, and we'll outline them in the coming year. The good news is you're well on the way, as a matter of fact, and I anticipate that later this year you will launch a new solar facility that will actually contribute to electrical energy in the grid that will actually make the city much more independent of fossil fuels as a potential source of power for local government. Now we must use that leadership opportunity to help challenge our citizens, particularly the kinds of folks that want to live here in the future and are moving here. The good news is we're beginning to make good progress in solar energy, and over the last 3 years, over 1,000 houses, and there are roughly about 22,000 houses here in the city, have adopted solar energy as a part of their energy source on their roof, on their property, and other areas. And now the city's moving forward in this area. You see, no community, every community, this community and every citizen must do their part to mitigate their impact on the planet. This is our most important and boldest recommendation. So taking together these types of actions, which we will press forward with a series of specific plans in the coming year, represent our first and highest priority. The next recommendation is one that the staff will present to you in less than the next 6 weeks, because we've already acted on it just at the beginning of this month in our community, after nearly half a year of discussion, including citizen input from a variety of small groups and discussion with the Green Team. We've developed and framed out a complete streets policy. Now, those of you who are familiar with it on the council might say, gee, the city really doesn't build many roads, but the real issue is you make a lot of recommendations to others who do build roads, including the state and the county all around us, potential impact on projects like the one you were just discussing, the kind of clinch points around the city you'd like to see changed on 450 or 197. All of these represent opportunities for you to reflect on what the values are that you want to bring forth as a community to help integrate the transportation choices that our citizens will be offered in the future. And so we want to see an integrated network of these choices, and the only way to do that, frankly, is for you to sit down and look at it as a policy statement where it's a part of your management and growth guidelines in the future. So the staff will bring this forth. They'll offer some specifics. It'll give them some flexibility and ultimately provide you with a framework within which to make future decisions on transportation choices, particularly the integration of these choices as we adopt various elements in it where all users, pedestrians, bicyclists, walkers, hikers, runners, and all of them can come together in a way that really integrates these types of choices so that the quality of life is enhanced for all types of citizens of all abilities and persuasions in terms of their transportation choices in the future. And I'm going to emphasize a couple more of those before this is done, because step 3 says if we're going to talk about greenhouse gas and we're going to talk about complete streets, then one of the basic things we've got to begin to do is develop the infrastructure so that citizens can make better choices about their own lifestyle that helps reduce their dependence on fossil fuel transportation alternatives. So we recommend that all commercial and residential property developed to redevelopment begin and profit from a series of guidelines on EV readiness. We'd like to see more citizens making this choice, and the only way they're going to feel comfortable doing it is if the infrastructure in our community is available to do it, and we need to set some examples here. So with a good beginning, we could install the infrastructure right here at City Hall. We have special parking places for hybrid vehicles. We don't have any charging stations for EV vehicles. Maybe it's time we set the example and showed by retrofitting this beautiful facility, because we overlooked it in the initial design and implementation and construction of it. We could do the same thing at Ken Hill Center, which has been undergoing some renovations. Just 2 small examples where we could lead by example, because ultimately we think you ought to require all commercial centers in this city, many of which are prime spots for future redevelopment, to make sure that when those opportunities come forward, that they retrofit existing facilities for the installation of this type of infrastructure in the future. When you're putting in a parking lot, it's much easier to lay the foundation for this kind of EV infrastructure than it is to go back and dig it up years later. This is the time to begin to think about that, but frankly, again, we can lead by example, not merely by thinking about it, but by doing it on some of our own properties. The 5th step is, again, a fairly easy one, because we've been talking about it now for the past 5 years. We've showcased examples. We're going to continue to offer workshops to citizens, but we've been moving in our thinking from simply thinking of this as an 80% goal, where we've now become convinced, because of the threat to local habitat values in our community, because of the increasing loss of access to nature in our community, because of the absence of more and more native species in our community, because climate change pushes these choices further north and things are warming up around here. You're going to hear lots more about that. Well, if we want to help frame these choices and keep local citizens having access to things like pollinators in their community, And that's one reason why community gardens are so difficult in this area. We don't have enough pollinators in the area to actually help vegetables grow. Well, we got to bring more native species back, and that means we're going to push the policy up to 100%. And we'll ask you to insist that all development proposals that come forward have as the first and preferred prerequisite native species in their landscaping plan. And again, we'll look at city facilities and see where we can lead by example there in a couple opportunities that are offered. Sec 6 is a good one because in light of some other recommendations we've made in the past, some people will be thinking about this because we've had now going on 1.5 years a pilot program for curbside pickup of compost in over 100 homes in the city of Bowie. It's time that we looked at a specific plan to expand that. Now, there are challenges in multifamily dwellings about what you're going to do with composting, but don't let the 10% of our housing stock that represents multifamily dwellings be a handicap on the 90% of our dwellings, which are single-family homes and could easily be accommodated by a changed schedule for trash collection and refuse use. We could do this within 2 years. This is a very doable thing. I actually think you could probably find some state encouragement and support and possibly some grants for this kind of work to help do it, much like we did in the original recycling program. But concurrent with this composting area, we've got to do a better job of educating our citizens about the recycling program and single stream recycling that already exists. What's happening here is the markets are changing for this, and therefore what we're finding is that citizens aren't as well educated about the impact of their own practices on what works and doesn't work, and the net effect is that some of our single stream recycling gets rejected because it isn't very clean. And the net effect of that is that more stuff then goes into the landfill, the very thing we're trying to avoid to begin with, because many citizens are confused about what they need to do to make sure it all works, to make sure it ultimately perhaps is marketable, and ultimately you're going to find, if you go down there, based on anecdotal evidence of our own citizens, and frankly if you consult your public works staff, I think you'll find the same thing, that a lot of citizens aren't quite sure, is this recyclable or that. Now there's some simple guidelines that most people, you know, glass, paper, and plastic, but then again a lot of things get confused. Well, some things are combining some of those things, so clearly we're going to have to do a better job of trying to educate our citizens on this, and this is a joint public works, and the Green Team and our staff will help with that because we're going to begin work very shortly already on a TV show to help with this in our own thing. So local cable TV will, within a year, we think, present a couple shows on this very thing. We're going to try to help educate citizens, but we'll be back to you probably for some support from public staff to help do that kind of thing. By the way, there's another thing, because about 30 years ago, we adopted a new type of street lighting for the more than 7,000 fixtures that you guys own in the city, and we went to sodium vapor lights. Well, sodium vapor lights were the lights of their time, but a generation or more has passed, and now it's time to begin to look at new energy-efficient lighting. And most of you know that the big push has been on at a lot of different forms for LED lighting. We can do the same thing with street lighting, and more than 500 communities across the United States have done this already. There's plenty of evidence of that it works. So it's time to move to streets that look like this instead of streets that look like that, okay? Because it lights up tonight. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, gee, what happens when the light goes up and that creates a bad effect on the sky? Well, all of that is controlled by the fixtures you adopt for the LED lighting. Your streets can be safer and your skies still dark. There are ways to address this, and many communities have good examples of doing it. So we think it's time you analyzed and authorized a cost-benefit study to fund, purchase, and install this transition to LED lighting in the next 5 years. But it'll never begin 5 years from now or a decade from now, unless you put some money into making sure that you have the adequate set of data on which to do it, and then that gives you the basis on not only which to figure out what the cost of it would be and the benefits of it, perhaps to look for some supplemental resources to help do it, since that obviously is a frequent concern for these types of large capital investments. The 9th step is the cheapest step in this whole thing, except for one other that's a kind of a follow-up. This step costs less than $10,000, at least based on estimates that we have from the state of Maryland when we've investigated other examples in at least a half a dozen spots in the metropolitan area, including right over in Annapolis, where one exists at the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. We think it's time in a local park that we establish a natural exploration area. So many children grow up in front of screens, and we think that more of them should grow up among trees. And the best way to do that is to take them off paved paths and put them in a place that's safe and find a way to introduce them to what nature's really all about. There's good literature, there's good research, there's ample resources, there are plenty of examples, and it's not expensive. So take that step. We think it would be widely used by our community. It's a time that this amenity were installed and sited in a local park. Finally, I remind you of one that I've mentioned now going on 10 times, and that is it's time to charge the Community Services Department with an idea that first occurred more than 40 years ago, and actually was reinforced again in the 1990s. You've developed several master plans for parks in our area, and several of those have addressed whether or not they ought to include a nature center to help people better understand the environmental impact of their work and how nature can be preserved and protected and enhanced in our community. Now, I know there are other nature centers that have been developed in the area in that same 40-year period. But it's time that we take a look at what it means to be a growing and mature city and whether or not such a facility would be adequately used and serviced for our school and our children and our aging and growing community in the future. So it's time to at least invest in a look at an assessment of the values and benefits of this. I think the opportunity exists. Not only that, I think their sites exist in our community, and I don't want to prejudge the outcome of it, but I do know that the decision will again never be made if we don't actually do a study of it, and I don't think it's so expensive to actually look at the experience of other communities and whether or not that would be beneficial to transfer it right here to this one. That's how you make a community sustainable, and that's how you enhance the quality of life, by helping people understand the benefits of actions that you've taken, and we think these are bold actions that you can adopt in the coming year consistent with that sustainability plan you adopted just 3 years ago. Because that's the way you get the benefits of bold action and local leadership. Taken together over the last decade, we've talked about more than 100 things you could do to move Bowie down a path toward more sustainable actions. We and you have taken over half those steps. But frankly, there's a number of untaken steps that we can still do, and we've outlined 10 of them here. There are some others I'd like to simply remind you of, simply because they're not all that expensive that we've talked about in the past. This one costs around $4,500, that's all. Each one of these things costs around $1,500. By the way, they're for sale in Anne Arundel County, right up the road at the Plastics Institute, the group that actually sells styrofoam to the industry. The industry association's located just up Route 3, and they have behind their property one of these recycling installations. Some of our citizens, me among them, and several of my colleagues back here, frequently drop off styrofoam there. But there's no reason, because this is one of those things you frequently see in the single-stream recycling containers, that shouldn't be, because this stuff lasts more than 500 years in a landfill, and yet it can be recycled. these kinds of drop-off containers, which needn't be collected curbside because they seldom mount up enough to make a special collection, would readily lend themselves to being dropped off if we had a drop-off site in North, South, and Central Bowie at various selected locations. And as I say, one of those sites costs around $1,500, could easily be advertised over the city website. There's plenty of options to do it. It's an easy, simple, and long-lasting impact on the things we do. Previously, we've talked about green fleets. Our opinion is that over the next 10 years, based on readily available, that is currently available, transportation technology, we could increase the fleet average of all the trucks and automobiles and stuff owned by the city of Bowie by an average of at least 3 to 4% a year. And if you made that, that means in 10 years, you'd be 40% better off than you are right now. That's an easy thing to do because each year you pass a capital improvements program. All you got to do is make sure that you begin to use those same non-fossil fueled vehicles we're talking about in all these other recommendations, so that what we're really saying is don't segregate your thinking about these kinds of things this way and that way. Integrate your thinking so that the choices you make in one area influence the choices you make in another. By the way, there's another area, easy one, on sustainable procurement, and we've made some recommendations there. And again, integrated buying choices could help and easily achieve this. We think major progress will be made this coming year on a community garden. They're currently looking at one over at Kent Hill Center. This is one of the higher ranked recommendations in the sustainability plan. We hope that by the time we're back here next year, we're talking about citizens using the new community garden at Kent Hill Center. So this is where we're beginning to make some progress, but still some of the details are to be worked out. It wouldn't surprise me, staff will ask you for some additional resources to help implement that in the coming year. Finally, because I've talked about composting and the collection of composting from each residence and expanding that program over 2 years, I want you to think that what this does is really meant to not add to, but to supplant some of the collection services that we already provide. The city of Bowie puts a trash collection truck in front of every house in this community at least 3 times a week. I'm not saying stop that. I'm saying let's reconfigure that so that 2 of those trips aren't just for regular trash collection, that one of them now involves compost collection. And that ultimately the reconfiguration of this kind of thing might result, and we think it would result, in more efficient and economies there of scale, and ultimately we could add this service by subtracting a service and making the same number of trips, and ultimately adding that kind of a service to the community. It would be not a loss but a gain in terms of our recycling ability, our reduce, reuse, and recycling. It's good policy too, guys, because if you look at the whole metropolitan area, and I shared this slide with you last year, we're virtually alone in the communities that has yet to really effectively look at this idea on an objective basis. Prince George's has done it, and they have saved in the area right around us over $9 million in the past year's budget based on this kind of a choice. Now, I know it represents an issue for some types of households. Again, multi-family dwellings generally create a different kind of challenge than single-family dwellings. But that challenge, again, can be addressed and met by thoughtful consideration of what the alternatives are for pickup, delivery, and storage, and perhaps some changes have to be made in order to address the special needs of multifamily dwellings. That would be good. But it's not insurmountable. It's simply a challenge that needs to be addressed in the context of developing what we think would be an effective future policy. We want you to continue to think about the sustainability plans. Remember, it's set when you adopted it, 25 goals, 57 strategies, and 103 actions. So we're going to be talking about those in different contexts with different people at different meetings throughout the coming year as we remind you of the opportunities based upon the plans that you've already adopted and how it represents an impact on specific choices that lie before you. Because taken together, these steps represent a path forward. They provide the basis to encourage specific bold actions which we think will enhance our values. They are the next step in creating a greener Bowie. They are the key steps, we think, in the coming year for enhancing the quality of life. Because if you do these kinds of things, we think you'll better serve residents and ultimately enhance what the quality of life is in this community for our children and our grandchildren. I want to thank you very much for your time and attention. It's been my pleasure to talk with you. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have about these recommendations.
Oh. I personally recycle and compost at home, and I was wondering if, I think it was step 5 was the, I can't recall the step about composting, but are there provisions?
Native species?
Composting?
Oh, you want to know more about native species?
So for the compost initiative?
The compost initiative. Okay.
So my question is, were there considerations?
There's been a pilot, and you can have George, your Public Works Director, come in and talk to you about the success of the pilot participation. Roughly, it was offered to about 100 to 150 different houses. About 60 to 80 participated. The reports that we've gotten back from the committee is that's been quite successful and well received. We think it's time to begin to ask George and the staff for a strategy for expanding that pilot in larger areas incrementally, much like we did the single stream recycling thing in the early 2000, pardon me, in around 2010, 2011, we were doing that. And that took us, we originally phased that over a period we thought of about 3 years, but the city ended up being able to do it in 18 months. And I tend to think the same sort of thing would occur, at least our committee does, with composting. We've now been looking at this for 1.5 years. It's time to begin to see how we could expand it more fully with an enhanced education program, an enhanced opportunity, and again, the gift to appropriate households in the area of a container with which to deposit the waste that could be picked up.
Thank you.
Hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions? We're good.
Sure, defer.
I got surrounded by doctors. Dr. Wolf.
The non-doctor in the house. Thank you for coming out, appreciate it, and I just want to kind of run down some thoughts for you on some of these things. You know, I think the solar initiatives, I think that's great. Complete Streets is, I think, a smart path forward for
Well, you own an electric car, and I know you've got some.
Well, that's my next issue for you too, which is electric cars are coming whether people realize it or not. And to your point, you know, we have to prepare now for what's going to be coming. And my concern is in particular around multi-tenant housing and the challenges that presents for future electric vehicle owners. That is to say, putting infrastructure in place where you have 50, 100 cars that are in a parking lot. Obviously, not all of them are going to be electric, but you know, if you have more than 2 and all you have is 2 parking spaces, it becomes an issue in terms of how that is managed. And I think that, you know, we need to probably do some smart thinking or take advantage of somebody else's smart thinking on this. I'm sure there's organizations out there that
They're not only organizations are examples of how to handle it. Sometimes the solution in part involves the additional use of solar, not simply generated electricity, with roofs over parking places that absorb light and then have plug-in stations. So you multiply the plug-in stations that are available in a multifamily dwelling by changing the configuration of the parking lot. There are good examples of that in the literature, and frankly, there are associations which offer examples of where communities tried it. Yeah. I think that, again, this is an area I'd like to explore. The examples we offered were more modest than that, but the truth of it is there are examples of some communities that have actually tried much bigger strategies and more bold actions that we've outlined here.
Well, I'm just thinking just in simple terms that, you know, you go into whether it's solar powered or not is kind of Mox Nix to me in terms of getting people to adopt the electric vehicle or for it to be an option for them. So I think to the point of making sure that any development that occurs is in effect prepared in advance. You know, they can put the piping in for the electric, the conduits, even if they don't supply the energy.
If they don't install the fixtures immediately, I agree.
And to get that sort of infrastructure in place to make it more available later when there is a higher level of adoption. I'm not specifically looking to push someone into it. I'm not trying to pull somebody into the notion. I just want to make sure that at a certain point in time that the infrastructure is able to adopt what becomes
I couldn't agree
more broadly. I think.
Couldn't agree more.
We do have, I believe, in the back of this building, we do have a couple of chargers that are for city-owned vehicles. So that's good news on that side. I think that the city should be mindful of expanding. I think the city of Greenbelt actually has a high-speed charger that they make available, which I've taken advantage of on occasions from time to time.
Me too. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, we need an example of it here.
Yeah. So native species, I think that's great. Composting, I think, is nice as well. Education on what's recyclable, I think, is important because that's always a debate in our household about what is and what is not, and so I think that would benefit everybody. The LED lighting, I see that as an issue. There is no tariff for LED lights for power. And I would encourage, all members of the green community to see what we can do about advocating for a tariff with the Public Utilities Commission for LED lighting, because until such time as there is a demonstrable economic benefit for adopting LED lights, I just don't see us making that huge capital.
Again, we recommended a study of that very issue. I think it's doable. I think you'll find the detail will be encouraging, but clearly we're not going to move ahead unless you guys have the adequate basis on which to do so. And our recommendations want you to help frame some of those. So in at least 3 of the areas I spoke to tonight, I recommended a study so that you can move ahead in an informed basis for future actions. We think that's the first step, getting better information so that you feel comfortable making a decision. I would rather
the focus be on how we can convince somebody to give a tariff or to set up a tariff for an LED light, because if the tariff is the same for an LED light as it is for a sodium, no matter, there's no economics to it. I mean, it's just a straight up capital expenditure.
It's cheaper to stay with what you got. Yep. I agree with that.
Yep. And it's not that I'm against LED lights, mind you, because I think that's great.
There is one consideration I would urge you to think about, not merely the tariff side of it, but the energy cost savings, because LED lights over sodium vapor, from the data we've seen at this point, suggests that the cost savings on the energy side, not the capital installation or the other things, which add cost to that, could be as much as 85% less.
Yeah. If they will give me that discount, but they won't. So
that's why I want you to get data.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that. Anyway, natural exploration area I think is a great thing. Styrofoam recycle I think is wonderful. Community garden, I'm looking forward to perhaps planting a tomato plant or two somewhere in the future there, since I have too much shade in my property. I will say this, though, the trash reduction is a real concern for me. One of our defining characteristics for the community is the services that we have.
I agree.
And specifically, it's people talk to me about it all the time, whether it's getting the streets plowed or and the trash picked up, and it's really been a significant issue. So I got a little bit of concern about cutting back on something that people kind of view as a defining characteristic of service.
With your staff, I think you're going to find that about 80% of the residents don't use the non-trash recycling pickup more than once a week. Mm-hmm. So again, look at some data that your own staff can provide you, but if you're going to withdraw that second staff pickup, substitute the compost pickup at the same time. So you're supplementing and expanding services, not merely looking like you're changing the mix of services is the best way I'd like to think about it. But again, these are choices you have to embrace based on information, and we would encourage you to get staff to provide information on that. The data that we have is anecdotal, and the anecdotal data that we have suggests that most residents don't use that service as frequently as some think.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, and thanks for your time in the committee as well. I do greatly appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Dr. Trout?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your report, former Mayor Gary Allen. I did want to, I had a little number 8. I had some concerns about number 8.
LED?
Number 8.
Okay.
And that was the LED lighting, and my colleague, you know, he covered that. But still, we've heard on several occasions, if I'm not mistaken, from staff, and I know my colleague mentioned tariffs, but there's also the problem that the amount of money that we're going to get from changing over from our current system to LED lighting, if I'm not mistaken, the staff report didn't say that we were going to save any money, which is the reason why we aren't going in that direction.
I haven't seen the final data. You may have seen data that hasn't been shared with the committee. We're having Public Works Director come and talk to us next month in March about this very issue. So we'll be back during budget to be, and it's conceivable, Councilmember, you may have seen some early data that hasn't been shared with us.
Dr. Trout, we've looked at 2 proposals by organizations that recommend that we should transition our 6,000 plus streetlights to LED. And it would be an expensive process, and there are financial funding mechanisms in place for that. However, you would expect to save the money to be able to pay for those upgrades using the savings from electricity and the use, assuming that it would be reduced because of technological advantages. However, we pay BG&E a flat rate on the electricity that we use. So if we were to upgrade, there would be no savings because the rate would stay the same. And that's why we haven't brought this forward. There have been some really good plans. If we were paying a rate based on usage, it would certainly be something worth doing, but we don't. And that's...
I haven't heard that data, but I can say that most of these studies that I've seen, and I haven't seen the detail for the staff input, amortize the costs over a number of years in order to reflect recovery as long as a decade or more. As a matter of fact, our church is looking at the installation of solar roof stuff, and they're talking about 15 to 18 years payback. So I am saying, I haven't seen the data, but I'd love to see what the staff has come up with a projection. The sodium vapor installation we made didn't pay for itself in the first quarter either, okay? And by that I mean the first 4 years. So I urge you to think, again, a longer time horizon. I haven't seen the data. I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Really appreciate you raising this issue and hope you don't get discouraged too easily on this one.
If there's no other questions, thank you, sir. Thank you, committee. I'm sure that as the city's budget process goes forward, we'll be hearing from you again.
We'll keep reminding you. Thank you very much, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Item next is distinguished budget presentation and the mid-year budget. Before we get into the mid-year budget, like that, ask our distinguished and learned finance director to meet us up here. Gentlemen, we're going to present him with an award. Oh, you want to go down there? Okay. Why not? Get a little bit cold here. Excuse me, guys, if you're going to, we still got work to do. All right. I've often said that when I came on board, we inherited some challenges. But two of the great things that we inherited was back in the early 80s, the then city manager and the then mayor created that pay-as-you-go program. It is a project we could not capitalize today. But that is the financial underpinnings now of the city, and that is one of the strengths of the city. It's one of the reasons why we have that strong AAA bond rating, and we have a reputation for strong, steady financial management. The other thing that I inherited when I got here was the quality of staff. And it has nothing but improved. It keeps going bigger and bigger. I swear on you guys across the state, about how proud we are of the quality of the men and women who work for the city. They come to work every day prepared to do good things. And I know we don't often get an opportunity to express our appreciation to you on an individual basis, but you have to understand that we truly appreciate everything you guys do. And you're always getting awards and recognition and stuff from outside, which reflects well on you and it reflects well on us. The stalwart operation in the city is our financial management. And Myron, I got to tell you, every time I come in and I ask him a question, it's like a mental Rolodex in there. And it pops out. I asked him today, well, what's the dollar number for, a particular tax that we pay? $1.7 million. I mean, it's just like it pops in there. So we're truly appreciative of the time and the talent and the skill that you bring to this job. With that, we're not the only ones that recognize you. You guys have got so many of these awards now. I think if you put them up on a wall, the walls are going to come down. The Government Finance Officers Association has chosen again to recognize the financial operations of the City of Bowie with a Distinguished Budget Presentation Award presented to the City of Bowie, Maryland for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018, signed by Christopher P. Morrell, who is the Executive Director of the Government Finance Officers Association. So with deep pride, we accept all the outstanding work that you do. So if you would pass on our congratulations to everybody in your office.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, residents of Bowie, and there's a reason why I think it was USA Today labeled Bowie the top city to live in the state of Maryland, and one of the reasons why is the way we performance of our staff and our financial management, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to read a memo that I sent to you all on the 19th of February today, and it says, honorable members of the Bowie City Council, I am pleased to submit for your review the fiscal year 18-19 mid-year budget review. The report covers the status of the objectives committed to in the budget, as well as the financial summaries and forecast information for fiscal years 19 through 2024. We focus on the general fund since it represents the bulk of our operations, and it's a fund that determines the real estate property value tax rate. By June 30, 2019, the general fund balance is projected to be $36.6 million and represents 69% of expenditures for the same year. As you might recall, your standard for the fund balance is 25% of the revenues. Revenues and expenditures for 2019 are projected at $50.3 million and $53.2 million respectively. The projected shortfall, referred to as a deficit here, is $2.9 million. But as you remember from last year, we projected to spend over $5 million from the fund balance. And this lower number is directly related to a lean spending program that we and the staff here have implemented since I've been here, which saves money for us and helps us sustain our fund balance, and we'll keep that up. The city's financial position is strong. As real estate values continue to recover and new development projects come online, the city's economic outlook remains stable. The report also indicates the status of each department's objectives, programs for each capital improvement project, and it is hoped that this programmatic information will illuminate many significant accomplishments made this year, as well as provide a schedule for completion of other objectives in the remaining months. What I intend to do is highlight some of the objectives, since you all have the entire report. And at the end of that, I will allow our director, Byron Matthews, to give you a brief overview of the financials as they stand right now. So I'd like to start with the city manager's department, and that would be on page 1 of the booklet, and highlight the Bowie Golf Course, which is one of the city manager's objectives, is to continue to focus on the Bowie Golf Course to improve the infrastructure and work toward improving the management practices of the golf course. The staff's met with on multiple occasions with the management of Bowie Golf Management, and the representatives have verbally stated that 2 of the owners do not intend to continue at the conclusion of the lease. So plans are for continuation by remaining ownership interests has not yet been identified, but we are continuing to work with them. There are several options for us as we look at how this will work out. We could in fact find a new lease with a new ownership structure for Bowie Golf Management. Solicitation for several course management, or the Bowie operation becomes a part of the city operation. There are several options. We're looking, of course, to sustain the current lease and to support this management operation, and of course live up to our responsibilities, because the facilities are in fact ours, and to make sure that they're safe. And as you remember from last year, there was a $250,000 allocation through the CIP project the last 2 years to do that. So I'd like to move to the next, which is number 3 there on page 1, which is continue to refine, implement, and update and improve city communications plan. As a matter of fact, as a result of my first night here, I think it was January 3rd, 2017, not that I'm remembering details here, but one of the things that came up that night was the residents of the city were here, and they were emphatic in the fact that they had not been informed. That was their perception. So we have written a very detailed communications plan, which I briefed you all on a year or so ago, and we honed it and made it better, formed a communications division itself, which is constantly communicating with our residents via print, email, and every social media that's available. We have a person who does just that, so that we're in communication with our residents, and the website also. And as a matter of fact, the main method of our measuring our success when we plow snow is through the comments that we get on Twitter and Facebook from our residents. And so that's how we know we're doing a pretty good job at that, but because they'll let you know, especially on social media. I'd like to just move down a little bit. I'm gonna go a little faster, but one thing I want to highlight, you know, I think the guy's name was Collins. He wrote this book about good to great. And one of the things that I endeavored to do since I've been here is to ensure that we have the right people in the right positions, so that we could be as efficient as we can as an organization. To that end, we have hired a facilities manager who is very technically competent, and an HVAC specialist who is very competent in helping us in many ways, since we have very complicated HVAC systems all over the city. I hired an assistant city manager, a deputy public works director, assistant finance director, who you met tonight. We hired an assistant gym director, and Mike Lonergan, and Duncan Church is a new gym director. We have a new director of the senior center, looking for an assistant, a new historic director. new solid waste supervisor since Melvin Thompson retired, and a brand-new high-speed HR generalist who's on their way to getting their certifications. And these are the kinds of people that we want to put in this organization to keep it a great organization and have all the right people on the bus and going in the right direction. I'd like to move to page 2 and highlight something that's forthcoming, but was deferred for, I can use until after the fiscal year, which is the measure resident satisfaction with city services and programming that will be under the communications guidelines. We're going to move that forward. We're going to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what we're looking for, and we intend to measure the citizen satisfaction in this survey in the fall of 19. Moving to page 3, one significant objective that's ongoing is the renegotiation of Comcast and Verizon cable franchise agreements. Comcast, that cable franchise expired several years ago, and Verizon, and right now we're working to renegotiate these agreements. That's very important. We requested a renewal of the franchise agreement with Verizon, as requested that with us, excuse me, and staff is responding. Comcast, we are still working with the entire Prince George's Consortium to update and renew that agreement, and that's Matty Reserto and Business Operations taking that forward. One thing I'd like to note on page 3 is that the solar farm issue, one of our objectives there was to decrease energy expenses of the city of Bowie by the end of FY19 by overseeing the installation of solar farm on the city-owned NCN property. It mentions here that there is a groundbreaking in August. That has been delayed. We are still working with Tesla to get them to comply with the agreement, and we're still working toward that. But that date is, since this document was drafted and published, that status has changed a bit, but we're still working in this between our city attorney and theirs. We move to page 5. One of the areas that since my getting here we really improved on is emergency management. The objective there is to enhance employee preparedness, public safety committee, and green team knowledge by conducting quarterly training programs to include topics such as CPR, infectious disease control, opioid overdoses, emergency preparedness, and incident command. The status is that the Office of Emergency Management has conducted several courses for staff, including senior and elected officials workshop for all hazard preparedness, web EOC, emergency operations management and operations, conducted a preparedness meeting for Hurricane Florence for senior staff and stakeholders. But by the end of December 18, 55 staff had completed the CPR AED first aid classes. The emergency manager has attended 3 meetings with the Public Safety Commission and updated them on the emergency management events in progress. Also, as you might know, we're scheduling some bad snowy weather tomorrow. The EOC will open up tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock and be in operation throughout the severe weather event. And the essential employees are exempt, have to come in. However, others will be able to take liberal leave, and so that nobody has an accident trying to make it here from long distances off. But the emergency management operation is very effective. I know if you remember last year, we had nearly 70 to 80% of our required staff trained on NIMS training, which is really hard to do because it's not the most exciting course of study, but it's necessary when the events happen to know how to manage an incident and know what the chain of command and know how to draw on assets. On page 7, under the police department, I'd like to highlight the requirement police had to hire 2 police cadets to assume security functions and that project has been set aside. One of the problems that exists right now is that it's really hard hiring police officers. We also had a number 1 there, and one of our objectives was to hire sworn officers by the 30th of June. There are several examinations that a person has to go through to get to be a police officer. And in today, where the public response to police officers has been negative, but not here, of course, but elsewhere, it's affected our ability to recruit. So we're having to fight through these perceptions to get people to apply and get the right people to apply. So we're going to stick with our current security system at the front, and hopefully later on, when the recruiting pool is increased and things die down, we can have a better opportunity to recruit. But it's a constant effort to recruit for the police department in the city of Bowie. Simple as that. Moving to IT, I'd like to highlight the second objective there, to create a formal strategic plan for the IT department. That particular objective is becoming hard to accomplish. As you all know, our IT department is really small, 13 people. Even though our automation has expanded probably 200% in the last 10 years, we still have the same number of people. So other pressing projects took precedent because we were intending to do that in-house. We may have to farm that out to a consultant, but we're taking a look at that. We did accomplish the number 4 there, which was determine the feasibility of a Wi-Fi utility that would be more costly than we could, and that was explained to Councilmember Gardner. On the next page, page number 10, coordinate the annual budget process, fiscal year-end audit, and mid-year budget review presentations. The annual budget process begins on December the 3rd of this past year. So far, we've conducted a process of gaining the input from all our department directors. I have one more department before I complete my review of what they need or they think they need and what we're prepared to propose to you all. And Byron and I will be, we'll be presenting introducing the budget to you all on April the 10th. But this is an all-consuming process and that the staff has done a really good job on in the last 2 months. I'd like to turn to page 11 and look at number 3. Of significant note, the Community Services Director initiated an outstanding program to help train her new leaders. If during my Army days, every time I had an assignment, I went to a school and learned how to do it. When I came to local government, I found out there were a lot of people in management and lead supervisory positions who had never had formal training in that area. And so one of the things that Ms. Hines instituted, since she has a large department, she has a lot of turnover, and so she was looking to train her supervisors, and this has been a very successful program. As a matter of fact, we may adopt it for the entire training program for the entire city, and so we're looking into that. Also, one of the things I'd like to highlight is, if we move up to the top, number 1 there, assess facilities condition reports and priorities maintenance needs by October. One of the things we did was we had a facilities maintenance superintendent who has significant experience in grinder pumps, HVAC systems, and all those things that can make quality of life in this building and other buildings very arduous. And we also hired a HVAC tech and immediately promoted that guy to make him the maintenance guy for the facilities maintenance person. And so now we have 3 very competent, very technically competent senior, mid-level, and technical level for facilities maintenance in the building. That saves us money, because when I arrived, because we had so little technical experience, we were at the mercy of the consultants and the repair people. But now we can technically assess their recommendations and make sure they aren't we aren't being overcharged in certain areas. If we could return to page 13, a significant objective that we expect to accomplish on June the 30th is that the Senior Center, in accordance with the National Council on Aging and National Institute of Senior Centers Accreditation, is seeking a 5-year national accreditation for the 3rd time. And we're working hard on that, and we expect to have that completed, and that is a significant event, and that will be a significant accomplishment. If you go to the next page here, on page 14, under animal control, we endeavored to develop and hold 2 responsible pet ownership classes by May the 31st of 2019. The staff has developed the curriculum for the classes. The first class was on Saturday, January the 12th, and there's an expectation that this will be completed by May the 31st. As you know, it's a lot, taking on a pet can be an arduous responsibility, and that's education is required to get it right. I'd like to direct your attention to page 15, which is under Recreation and Parks, and in support of the city's sustainability plan, strategies CT5-.2 and FW 2.1 and ED 2.1 provide at least 3 city-sponsored health, wellness, and fitness programs in the city parks by June the 30th. Staff is researching the program and plans to offer 3 health, wellness, and fitness activities by June the 30th. And this is on course. And reason I highlight that to indicate that Mr. Allen mentioned the sustainability plan. We by that I mean our staff directors are operating with the sustainability plan in mind and in their planning. And on the next page here, 16, a significant thing I'd like to point out. And we maintain 123 athletic fields and numerous parks and trails. Well, as the people that were here tonight talked about why they like living in Bowie, is that the services and the parks are well maintained by our Parks and Grounds Division, and we put our funding up to maintain those. And the objective here was to install picnic tables and shade structures as outlined in the city sustainability plan at Centennial Park by September 30th, 2018, and that objective was completed. And they're going to put the tables and awnings will be placed in the spring when things warm up. So that's another effort of our using our funding to maintain a certain quality of life in Bowie. I'd like to point out on page 17 under gymnasium, and the plan and execute 2 one-week basketball camps to be completed by April 30th. The first basketball camp was held July 16 through 20 and 18. 40 campers participated. Approximately 80% of the participants were Bowie residents, which is a great highlight. And the second camp is scheduled for next month. But one of the people we hired, the assistant, is an expert at this, and we're taking advantage of his expertise. And also, if you look at the next page, we're planning for the organized spring youth basketball clinic. We like to play basketball, soccer, baseball, and hockey, and some people lacrosse. And I saw some guys playing cricket the other day in the parking lot out at the town center. Well, I guess they were waiting on their parents or something. But we endeavor to maintain our facilities. And with regard to the new ice arena, we're looking to issue our bid documents on next month in around the 4th of March. One of the things on page 19 that the CIP projects is that we want to, you see that the senior center facility, it has some mileage on it, but we have endeavored to improve the HVAC system there, which is important, and also the cabinet counter replacements at that location, since one of the things that you can brag about in the city for sure is our senior center, and we intend to keep it maintained. On page 21, I'd like to point out that you all authorized the staff $100,000 to look at the feasibility of an indoor sports facility, basketball, volleyball, and we have, that project is being pursued on two axes, if I can use that term. One, our staff is hired a consultant to give us the feasibility study on the where and how much we can locate a facility, a indoor sports facility, if we were to pay for it by ourselves using our fund balance. All right, Greater Mount Nebo is still working along a different axis, but we'll all be here on the 10th to develop some joint a joint project with us and others, and with other funding, and an annexation proposal included, and that's going to be presented to you all on the 10th of April, and hopefully after that we can decide which direction we might want to go. But we may not spend all the $100,000 either, which is a good thing. I'd like to highlight page 23 on that same community services CIP, the pedestrian bridge repairs that were set forth there are at White Marsh in the wooded area near there. That particular bridge is being repaired, and that project is almost is designed, 90% designed, and we plan to implement that as soon as possible. One point on page 24, I'd like to highlight number 3, which is implement the residential tree planting incentive program. Staff sent letters to 400 homes in Meadowbrook and Collington Station inviting people to participate in a plant one tree, because the reason that neighborhood was picked because they had the least, the less dense canopy compared to my neighborhood, where I have 65 trees around my house. This program is a culmination of a multi-year project, particularly funded by the Chesapeake Trust, to increase tree canopy on private property, private residential property. And additional outreach is being planned to help plant the additional trees. We haven't had the response that we wanted, but we're going to keep on trying. Also, I'd like to point out number 4, which is a project where we conduct a 5K run walk event, Veterans Day weekend, which is to honor our veterans. This was the first one. I think our new council member was a runner out there, and he did good. I thought he needed to put some on his head. I remember seeing him out there. He was, well, anyway. But I want you to know that I ran the last mile or so personally, and so it was a great event. And 500 people were there, and it was really cold, but people still out there having a good time, and that's a wonderful event for us. I'd like to direct your attention to page 26, which is the Hiker-Biker trails. This $25,000 is allocated in Public Works to go out and update and maintain our trails and make necessary requirements and maintenance to them. And this is there's $25,000 planned out for the next 4 years just for that purpose. This is not the project, this is a maintenance project, which is working out for us rather decently. On page 27, the Solid Waste Division, as an old Public Works Director, I'll say this: there are a lot of cities that exist Some cities may have a police department, some may not, some may have planning, but every city's got a public works department. And our public works department is really good. These are the salt of the earth people. One of the things we want to do is host at least one recycling drop-off in the city of Bowie for electronics. And the staff is seeking prices for that sort of thing. And assuming prices stay within our budget, we are planning to schedule that for the April of 2019. Also, there's a plan to host 2 shredding events, which are well attended, and looking to schedule those events for June the 22nd, and we have one in October already. On page 28, number 2, under street divisions, one of the things about as cities get older, the measure of the city is how well we maintain the city and keep it pristine. And the thing that really way to tell if you're in a town that where the people are paying attention is what the street signs, whether they're maintained or not. And we plan to do that and replace 300 street signs, name signs for this fiscal year. A name sign replacement program began in 2016 and demonstrates our resolve in that respect. It's 60% complete. 174 signs have been replaced seamlessly. And we anticipate completing this, and we'll certainly put that in the budget for next year. On page 30, I'd like to highlight our resurfacing, street resurfacing program, in which we budget $1.6 million. The residents, they want the trash to be picked up, they want to be able to call the police, and they want the streets paved. And the construction is near an end here, and we're 95% complete. There's a punch list existing for corrections on the part of our contractor, and we'll continue to endeavor to keep our streets nice and smooth and paved. And even we have pavers planned, if you look down one level, for Quill Point and Drive, Fletcherstown Road, and Fletcherstown Road at Quarter Horse Drive. And I don't know who lives on Quarter Horse Drive, but it must be good folks over there. They get there. All right, so moving to page 33. There will be stormwater management improvements at Kin Hill. That's under construction. That's a $475,000 program project, and it's being managed. Also, there are, I think Mr. Allen mentioned, we have a plan to install the public gardens over at Kin Hill, so as one of the first ones that we put up in our city. And of course, finally, I'd like to mention the meter replacement. It's a 37-year project. It's 76% complete, $275,000. And of course, the water meter is associated with our water system. Well, I'm going to let Mr. Matthews transition and begin with the financial summary, and then afterwards we'll certainly answer any questions. Before we go ahead. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, got a couple of questions. Sure. On page 2, item number 2, when we were talking about doing the survey.
Yes.
Can we tease out, when we do the survey, can we tease it out so that we're getting some specifics with regard to seniors and also to youth with regard to their satisfaction of how we're providing services to those population?
You bet. Yes, sir.
And then on page 5, under emergency management, item number 1, can we also include, I know we had a tabletop exercise that we did this last year.
Right.
Can we look at a tabletop exercise to take on another calamity as opposed to what we did this past year, which was outstanding, looking at the dams, looking at a particular dam overflowing or breaking?
Yes, sir.
And then on page 21, items number 5 and 6, when we're talking about those developments, specifically with item number 6, with regard to the ice, according to the feasibility study that we did for the indoor sports facility, it suggested that we needed to go in with some other people, you know, get some help, have sponsorships, et cetera. And one of the things that I'm interested in with regard to the ICE, has anybody reached out to Ted Leance? Because this is something that came up from the lawyer, I can't remember his last name, but the lawyer from Mount Nebo, because they had some dealings with Ted Leance. And plus, also, there is an ice rink, which is in D.C., which was in the news just over the last 7 to 10 days, if not even more recent than that. But Fort DuPont, which is right there off of South Dakota Avenue, and that they were looking at getting some funding or getting some help from Ted Leance, and also the city was trying to see if they could overcome the decision that the mayor was making, because the mayor wanted to take that money that was allocated for that ice rink and put it in the schools. And one of the things that they were trying to do was see if they could get some outside funding. And I did see when they showed that particular ice rink, there was a number of signs which said capitals. So I think we're really missing it if we don't at least reach out to try to see. The only thing he can say no, if we don't ask, is no. So I would hope that we go ahead and see if we can't, even if it's naming or whatever is available, but if we get $1 more than what we have, that's beneficial to us. But I think you'll give us more than $1.
Well, I mean, we can certainly approach that if the council wants to look for sponsorship or of some sort.
Right.
I mean, that had not been a direction before, but
I think we should be taking that into consideration, because we want to try to see how we can reduce that that $2 million deficit. And if we can reduce the $2 million deficit, that goes a long way to balancing the budget. And $2 million is not a significant amount of money, you know, as far as the budget that we have.
Well, yeah, it's one.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
We'll look into that.
Okay. Page 24, item number 1. It was mentioned that 400 emailings or letters were sent out. I forgot which one, but anyway, the number was 400 between Culleton Station and another community. And I know Culleton Station has about 600 houses, because I think I heard you say that participation, the response was low. Yeah. I think we need to look at our database to make sure that we got the right addresses, and B, if we send out 400 and Culleton Station has 600 homes and there's 2 communities, we're missing a lot of folks.
Well, I think it was a measured distribution, considering we had a one-man operation there.
Right.
But we'll look at expanding our numbers there, see if we can't get more people, because we only got 60 trees. I mean, we'll provide the trees. So.
Right, and here again, you might even want to go directly to the president of the HOA, and I can give you his name and number, email address, and also his cell phone number. And that might be a good way to, because they do meet regularly.
Right. I've attended a meeting or 2 down there.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I have.
Any other questions before I hand it over to Mr. Matthews? Byron?
I got a couple, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Dr. Trout touched on a couple of these things. When does our golf course lease end exactly?
September, about 2.5 years from now.
Okay. So we have a bunch of capital improvements on that golf course that we're working on right now. The current managers don't want to continue to manage it. Is this informing in any way how we're prioritizing the improvements that we're doing at that facility?
The short answer to that is yes. We're taking kind of a step back in terms of taking a look at the facility of the clubhouse. We're going to be doing an assessment of that. So we've put a couple of the improvements that we're looking at doing this year on hold as we assess the condition of the clubhouse and how we're going to move forward. So we're taking a broader look at the golf course, its lease, and its future operations than maybe we would if we were looking at just continuing on with the lease.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Mears. And thank you for your email earlier today about rumor control on that one. On the election task force, so apparently that's been formed. I don't remember that we actually appointed people. What's going on with that?
No, that was anticipated when data was collected for this book. We were hoping to have that
Okay,
task
so
force
we're still waiting.
But
Okay, no
yeah,
worries.
and that's on you guys to get me your names.
Oh, okay.
I've got that.
We're on the same page.
Talk to you again about it tonight.
Cool. Dr. Trout asked my question about the resident survey. For the printed newsletter, it looks like we're waiting for a presentation on that. Do we know when we'll be talking about that in the near future by any chance? Doing some sort of printed distribution of information to residents, since apparently no one reads the Blade.
The printed newsletter, I think that's planned for this budget year.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
That money will be in there for us to implement that after July 1st.
Cool. I noticed that in the document it stated that the Tesla solar farm was moving along as planned. We don't have any problems there right now?
Well, as I said, that since we drafted this document, that the circumstances changed.
Yeah.
And
okay.
so we're working with them to gain compliance with the agreement.
Gotcha. One of the things that I'm going to talk to John Henry King about in the near future, and that I want staff to think about in the next budget, is doing a formal kind of business review. So we talked about doing a comprehensive survey with our residents. I'd like us to be actively reaching out to and doing a survey with our small businesses to get a specific sense of the challenges that they're facing, and any policy impacts that they're facing from the city or the county or the state. I'd be really curious to hear what our small businesses are telling us. We've had some turnover recently. Residents are starting to really grumble about it. I'm just curious as to getting some more data about businesses specifically in Bowie, and I'll talk about that later in the budget cycle.
Okay.
Code compliance, I've talked about this a little in the past. Is it possible for us to establish new categories of fees in the code compliance realm, specifically related to things like medical waste? I'd be curious if that's something that we can look into. So we have a couple of group homes. Hi, Ms. Levin. We have a couple of group homes that are operating the city. Most of them are fine, but a couple are just absolute perennial problems. And a specific complaint that residents have about some of these homes is that they're finding a lot of like medical waste being left out, so like needles on the ground, latex gloves and stuff. And we currently don't have any specific thing in our current code enforcement handbook about that. We've been trying to find, a few of us have been trying to find ways that we could really strongly disincentivize some of these perennial homes from not doing their jobs, which is a constant source of consternation for residents. And I'm wondering if we can specifically go after certain activities related to these homes that would really kind of encourage them being better neighbors in general.
So yes is the answer to your question as a general thing. The medical waste, I mean, we'll have to document it, and those are probably questions for another evening. Cool. But anything that creates a documentable nuisance of that nature would be something that I think that you have the general public health, safety, and welfare power to regulate.
That's great to know. Thank you so much. I'll definitely follow up on that one.
Question.
Doctor, yeah.
This is a follow-up on your question, because that's interesting. I think we have a couple of areas where we really need to discuss as far as let them know what the problem is. And one would be the Prince George's County Department of medicine, not medicine, but of health, and also the state health, because both of them control the distribution and how you dispose of medical waste. And there are strict guidelines both at the state level and also at the county level with regard to how you dispose medical waste.
That's helpful to know. Thanks, Dr. Trout. One quick thing on the ice rink. Dr. Trout asked one of my questions on this. I just want to emphasize again, super important for me that this thing comes as close as possible to recuperating its operating costs. I was super candid with the ice hockey community in the last 2 years that the only reason I could support this is that it would generate money back, at least, attempt to generate as much money back as we spend. So I just want to reiterate that. No question there. Historic properties. We have a new person heading our historic properties operations. I'd be really curious to have them I know they're looking for like new programming to do. I'd be curious for them to see what the county facilities are doing So I hear a lot from, for instance, some of our state lawmakers have mentioned they see a lot of particular programming going on at Montpelier Mansion and other of the county-run historic facilities that they think would actually be really great in Bowie, both for generating a little bit of cash and also just kind of generating interest in some of them. So that's something that I'll also follow up on. Public Works, and I swear I just have 2 more things. Public Works, I just wanted to say a big thank you to George Stefanos and his team. We've had persistence issues with lights going out, especially with all the rain. Apparently it impacts the wiring or something in the ground, creates perennial light outages. George has been on top of that and has been super helpful. I had a lot of nice emails from residents today thanking him for some specific instances where his team kind of jumped in and moved things along. For street repairs, this could just be anecdotal, but I'm hearing from residents and also seeing myself as I drive around, we're repaving a lot of streets that don't appear to be in that bad a need of repaving. I've especially noticed this in parts of the T and K section, and I think in the S section as well, but I'm just seeing a lot of street repair work going on streets that I drive regularly and seem to be mostly okay. So I just want us to kind of put a pin in that and potentially revisit the schedule. Are we moving a little bit too quickly on some of these roads? Do we need a little bit more carefully evaluate how we're assigning roads for repairs? And that's all I have, and thank you, staff, for being here super late tonight.
Well, the paving, I mean, we'd have to know. Sometimes other people pave after WSSC, those guys, after they tear up a street, and that might be the case. With regard to historic properties, we're certainly prepared to take a look at what the other people, the other entities are doing. One thing I wanted to tell all of you about, there is a phenomenon that has involved in the older sections of town with regard to streetlights. They have, because these streetlights have been in the ground for 50, 60 years, and especially in District 2 and places like that, they are failing in large numbers. And so instead of having, you know, initially our contractor was designed to go out and look at the light, replace a bulb, replace a fixture, and that would be it. But what's being required is that there are cable failures, and they're affecting many lights within a 1 block area. And that's a different repair. It's much more expensive, and it takes a longer time. And that's happening in the older section of Bowie now. And we've energized our contractors, and they're working really hard. And we are trying to prioritize, especially those situations where a cable has taken out a block and not just one light. And that's one of the issues we're dealing with. And I just wanted to make you all aware so you can, your constituents can understand the circumstances we have. You know, some of the cables are just aging, and but we're fixing them, and we're going to adjust our budget to deal with that for next year.
Just one quick follow-up on sure. The light things. Thanks again for all the help staff has provided in solving those light outage issues. Is there a, kind of like the water and sewer, is there a opportunity to kind of assess neighborhoods or areas and do kind of preemptive replacement or repair? Would that be more economical, do you think, or is it best still to maintain it as a fix as it breaks approach?
Well, it would take a lot more money to do that, mm-hmm. And you know, you hate to dig up the street and you have a well-functioning cable there. So that would, what we could do, we actually talked with the CEO of the organization that repairs our lights, mm-hmm. and they've become much more responsive. And if the need be, we could hire a different or another support there, but that would mm-hmm. be costly to keep up with. But right now, we're preemptive strikes. We just wouldn't know. Yeah. If we could determine beforehand what the status was on the ground, I'll see if George, see if there are any X-rays type apparatus they can use.
Yeah, I mean, it's a chronic problem. I know that staff is engaged in a yeoman's effort to remedy things as they pop up. I just don't know whether alternatives there are for preemptive, and there may not be. I mean, this may be the best way to do it, and if that's the case, that's fine too. but certainly appreciate your looking into it. Thank you.
One of the challenges that they're having as well, you can certainly test the lines between point A and B and see how they are functioning there. They're trying to utilize the dollars to do spot repairs to only replace a section of the line rather than long runs of the line, obviously trying to conserve the dollars. One of the challenges that comes up with that is when they go in to do the spot repair, with the age and the condition of the line, the act of fixing that spot ends up disturbing the line and creating a new break further on down the line. And that's one of the things that kind of drives some of the time associated with this. It starts off with a simple repair, and then, surprise, surprise, 100 feet down the line, you created another break because of the act of trying to do that repair itself. So it's been quite challenging.
Excellent. Thanks for the explanation. Appreciate it.
Anything else? All right, we're going into the next section. Barry?
Thank you all. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm going to begin on page 37. You've had the report, and I'm sure that you've read it, and I won't try to spend too much time detailing each line item. Based on our current trend analysis, revenues are expected to come in at $50.2 million and expenditures of $53.2 million. That's basically a $3 million deficit. When we started the budget for the year, that proposed deficit was $6.8 million. So staff has basically taken, as Al indicated, some precautionary measures to help reduce the expenditures for 2019. Revenues are still on track based on our original projections. Looking at page 37, where we give you the general fund major revenue sources, we give you a comparison of where we were at last year, 2018 actual, what our budget is, and what our year-to-date as of December 31st. And as you can see, we have collected almost 67% of our revenue at this point. On page 38, gives you the same type of analysis based on the departments throughout the city, organized by major divisions, city manager's office, police department, thus forth. Expenditures year-to-date, December 31, 2018, are $25.7 million, which relates to 44% of the budget. Again, during 2019, revenues were 4.2% higher than revenues last year this time. The chart below, Exhibit 1, gives a picture of that to show you how we are collecting the revenues, how much per month, and where we are at the midpoint. We give the same type of layout on page 40 for the general fund expenditures to show you where we were in 2018 at 26.1 million, and FY19 25.7 million. The equipment acquisition fund, as the mayor referred to earlier this evening, that is the fund where we purchase mostly all of our vehicles and large equipment. During this particular part of the phase, the budget was $3.5 million. We spent almost $700,000 of that. Here in January, we purchased 4 refuse trucks. So this is not reflected in here, but we normally, everything that has been approved on our schedule, we normally purchase that. On page 41, we've just gone over some of the major capital projects for FY19. This is a summary of some of the spending that we've already covered. I'll move over to page 42 and look at water and sewer. As you can tell, our water and sewer fund balance is projected to have a $218,000 revenue for 2019. As you can see on page 42, our current revenue to date is $3.1 million. Expenses are $2.8 million on page 43. Same as the general fund, we try to give you a depiction of the collection of revenues during the first 6 months as compared to the 12 months of the last fiscal year. On page 45 is another depiction of the expenditures and how they relate to last year and the target that we're on. Page 46 begins the analysis of our forecast. And what we want to press upon council at this time is that our major revenue sources are property tax. That's about 61% of the revenue. The state shared revenue is about 26%. And that state share revenue is a combination of motor vehicle fuel tax, state aid for police protection, and admissions and amusement tax. Expenditures in this projection were analyzed on a trend analysis basis, as well as revenues. Our forecast assumptions for the out years, 2020 and 2024, are as follows. We're looking for a 5% assessment increase during those 4 years, keeping the real property tax the same for the upcoming budget year, increasing that to 43 cents in 2021, 44 cents in the assessed value in 22, and 46 in the taxable years 23 and 24. One item that I want to remind council about our tax rate is that 3 years ago, as we embarked upon the stormwater management things that we had to do in regulation. Okay. In regulation, and in order to comply with the regulations from the EPA, we decided not to charge a separate stormwater tax fee. The city of Bowie decided to include that in our property tax fee. So we have to be mindful of that as we're making the decisions on raising the property tax. The EPA requirements are very significant and require a lot of capital outlay. State revenues, state share revenues are expected to increase by 3% during the forecast period. Debt service includes another $25 million for the construction of the ice arena. On page 49, we give you the fund balance projection for the general fund as of FY 2014. We see that at $21.5 million, and that will represent 32% of the forecasted expenditures for that year. As you know, your policy is 25% of expenditures. Water and sewer has the same lineup. Rate-based user charges are 73% of the budget. The rest of the items are covered by the minimum charge, renewal and replacement, and other revenues, including account processing, late fees, interest income, and proceeds from the sale of fixed assets, and tower leases. The expenditures are separated in two separate categories: the operating departments for billing and accounting, and the non-departmental overhead, along with the debt service and capital outlay. Because this is a proprietary fund, in order for us to calculate what the projected fund balance is, we look at our CAFR at year end and basically look at our current assets versus our current liabilities. And that's a similar calculation to what we use on the governmental side to calculate the fund balance. We're all aware that our consumption for water use has been flat for many years now. This projection shows 470 million gallons of water and 421 million gallons of sewage. And that's because we have a relationship with WSSC over at the Milford location where we're selling them water, but they're using WSSC sewer to move through some of those buildings, to remove the waste from some of those buildings. We can move to page 51, and that talks a little more about the fund balance for the water and sewer. At the end of the projection period, FY24, we're showing the fund balance at $1.9 million, which is 17% of the forecast. So during this particular year, we will not meet our fund balance policy. Exhibit 3 is just another depiction of revenues and expenditures for a historical view from 2010 through the projected year 2024. So I just wanted to make sure that I got in the point about the stormwater management. The forecast summaries will change as we go through the budget process and get newer numbers from staff as it relates to their spending for FY19. And we'll be back to council on April 10th to share that with you. And that's the end of my presentation. I'll be willing to address any questions.
Dr. Kraut?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Matthews, for the presentation. I do have a question on the stormwater management tax. We have included that in the property tax, correct?
That's correct.
What percentage of that is the property tax? Like the property tax is, just for the audience, the property tax is what, 40 cents?
Our property tax is 43 cents.
43 cents?
Yes, but that includes a measured amount for the stormwater management. Stormwater management, based on the capital projects that we have, works out to about 2 cents on a tax rate, and that's about $1.4 million.
Okay, so in other words, of the 43, 2% of it is stormwater management.
That's correct, sir.
How do most municipalities handle that? Do they handle that as a specific tax to stormwater management?
They had the option in the legislation to issue a separate tax.
Okay, and this tax is done annually?
Yes, it's done along with your property tax.
Okay.
So it would be just another feel on your property tax for stormwater management.
And Tacoma Park has one. They, when I was there, they had their own Stormwater Management Act. So within Montgomery County, it was approximately $28 per standard household. If you were a larger entity and you had more impervious services, it could be larger if you were a big business, but standard household was and it was called a fee, not a tax.
So how long have we been using the stormwater management tax in the property tax?
I would say we've been doing it for the last 4 years.
Okay.
And that's why when we had the projection of increasing the real property tax rate, that was part of the consideration.
Are you talking about the tax yield?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm thinking is, I think we should articulate that, because basically what has happened over the last 4 years, we have absorbed an additional tax within the property tax. And as far as I know, total maximum daily load, from what I've read on that, that is something that is supposed to be borne by the residents, which the residents are paying for. It's just that the residents are not aware that they're paying for it. I would like to let the residents know that this is a tax that is above and beyond, which comes from MDE, Maryland Department of Environment. This is not something that is initiated by the city of Bowie. This is something that all the communities in the state of Maryland have to adhere to, based upon the total maximum daily load, which goes back to the preservation of the Chesapeake and the watershed. So I think this is important information, because some people are probably confused and think that they're being overtaxed, when in fact there was a tax that was imposed on us as an entity, municipality and residents, by the state of Maryland, and that these folks are actually benefiting from the fiscal, the fiduciary responsibility that you and staff has provided. It's just that they're not aware of it, and I think they need to be aware of it, because actually what we've done is we've absorbed them from paying an additional tax.
That's correct, Councilman. I think when we were going about this, council decided that that was the best way to handle it without making an additional burden on the taxpayer. And because we had such a rich fund balance, the offshoot of that was not realizing how much this EPA regulation was going to actually cost the city.
Right. But by the same token, we've been having discussions for the last several years about expenditures, about going back and pulling money out of the reserve fund based upon not the true reason, well, I won't say not the true reason, but not the in total of reason, because a significant part of it is at least 2 cents on that dollar for the last 4 years has been a new tax which has been imposed on us by EPA, MDE, under the total maximum daily load, that residents are not aware of, and they are benefiting from our fiscal responsibility. And I think they need to be aware of that, because we need to correct the misinterpretation that we're spending money on recreation and not helping the residents. Because that's what we've been hearing from the residents over the last several years. I think we need to let them know.
Quick follow-up question on the issue of that tax. My understanding is, well, that tax comes through us, and we're expending that, correct?
Well, it's not a tax.
Well, but the tax.
Excuse me. We would have to impose the tax. Right. What's imposed upon us is the Bay restoration cleaning.
Yeah, we have to remediate.
Exactly.
The expenditure is ours to remediate. We're not passing it on to somebody else. I didn't want it to sound like we were taking the money and then moving it on to somebody else. It's the remediation that we have to incur. Thank you.
Any other questions, staff? All right, well, thank you very much for an outstanding report. Again, it's obvious why you guys get such glowing marks from outside the city as well. I don't know how we keep our pencils as sharp as we do if it weren't for you guys. All right, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, I'd like to make a motion to move to an exec session. Under statutory authority, to close session, general provisions, Article 3-305B6, to consider the marketing of public securities.
Second by Dr. Trout. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Good night, folks.
Good night, folks.